Forget long waits at airports or endless train trips. In less than 15 years, you might be able to travel across Europe by metro. But this ambitious billion-dollar plan still has some huge challenges ahead. The Starline project aims to create a high-speed rail network connecting 22 European countries. So instead of dealing with airports, security lines, and separate train systems, you could travel across Europe almost like you're using a city metro. Here's how it would work. Starline would connect major European cities through direct high-speed routes using the same coordinated system. You could hop on in Lisbon, Portugal and go all the way to Helsinki, Finland, all with one ticket and one simple app. But connecting cities that are far apart will take more than just building new rail lines. Direct routes would mean building a lot of complicated things, like tunnels, bridges, digital signing systems, and huge stations. It would work like a metro system that moves 30% faster than the trains and roads Europe has now. They say you could get from Helsinki to Berlin in about 5 hours. Today, that same trip by train would take more than a day. But this project is more than just building new tracks, tunnels, and all that. The plan is also to bring Europe's existing national rail systems into one coordinated network, with unified tickets, synced schedules, and standardized passenger services. The Starline trains would have a deep blue design. The carriages wouldn't be divided by class, but by different needs. For example, people who need to work can sit in the quiet zones. Families will have special sections just for them. The stations will be pretty impressive too, with shopping areas, sports venues, restaurants, and even museums. Starline is also supposed to be better for the planet. Right now, if people need to get across Europe, they normally just grab a cheap short flight. But when millions of people do that, it adds up fast. Europe is now one of the biggest sources of airplane pollution in the world. So if Starline can really take people on those same trips while cutting carbon dioxide pollution by up to 90%, that's a pretty big deal. The plan sounds amazing, but they still have major challenges ahead. The first big problem is money. Building something this massive would cost around $490 billion, and that's just an estimate. The final number could be even higher. And even if they find the money, that doesn't mean construction can just start. They still need a lot of approvals across different countries. There could be delays because of environmental reviews, land issues, and local rules. So for now, Starline still feels more like a big idea than a project that's actually ready to be built. For eons, the Red Sea has separated the continents of Asia and Africa. They're close enough to wave at each other, but far enough that moving between them requires planning. Ferries do the job, but it's time for something better. That's why engineers have envisioned an ambitious mega project of tunnels and bridges that will not only link the two continents, but also reshape the region forever. Millions of years ago, the Arabian landmass slowly drifted away from Africa, opening a watery scar that we now call the Red Sea. This place is famous for its crystal clear water that looks filtered even when it isn't, as well as for coral reefs that seem to be painted by an overachieving artist. Let's zoom in on one specific location, the Strait of Tiran. Every ship headed toward the upper ports squeezed through this one busy hallway. On the one side is Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula, rugged, golden, and sprinkled with resort towns. On the other side, it's Saudi Arabia, the Tabuk coast, where quiet desert hills stroll right down to neon blue water. The distance between them looks tiny on a map, almost like someone forgot to connect the lines. That's because the strait is only about 8 miles from peninsula to peninsula, close enough that on a clear day you can sometimes see the opposite shoreline. It's a busy gateway, and it's the exact gap designers want to turn into a direct road and rail link. So what are they actually trying to build? The idea is to create one continuous route between the Sinai Peninsula and the Tabuk coast. Engineers are still deciding whether it should be a bridge, a tunnel, or a hybrid, the combination of two. The problem is under the water. Near the shore, the bottom is shallow enough to support strong columns, but as you move farther out, the seabed drops quickly until it reaches about 900 feet. It's almost like walking off an underwater cliff. That sudden plunge is too deep for standard bridge supports. The design has to adjust to the landscape instead of forcing one shape across the whole gap. If they go with a bridge, the builders would place huge steel tubes called caissons on the seafloor. Think of them as giant metal buckets. Once they're in position, the water gets pumped out so crews can build a dry foundation inside. Concrete turns that space into a pillar rising from the seabed. The floating cranes drop long road sections between those pillars like puzzle pieces. It works well in shallow areas, but anchoring becomes difficult in deep waters due to high pressure, soft ground, and strong waves. Tunnels avoid this by going under the problem, literally. Crews can send tunnel boring machines called worms, or they can build submarine-sized tunnel segments on land and sink them into place. It's the same trick used in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau megalink, which proves it works even in busy, deep water. Now, people might look at the map and think, 8 miles? That doesn't sound so bad. In reality, it's nothing like tossing a giant tree trunk over a river and calling it a bridge. Cars, buses, and trains need those long, slow, friendly ramps that don't feel like a roller coaster. By the time you build those ramps on both sides, the whole thing could stretch to nearly 20 miles. That puts it in the same club as giants like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel in the US or the King Fahd Causeway between Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. But it's not just the scale or unpredictable seabed that makes this intercontinental project challenging. There's also the climate. Temperatures regularly pass 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Concrete dries faster than planned, so crews have to cool it or work in shorter windows. Steel stretches in the heat just enough to make precise work annoying. And workers themselves cannot stand in direct sunlight for long without feeling like a baked potato. On top of that, the salty sea air chews through metal quicker than most people expect, so the whole structure needs tough protective layers and regular checkup. If this project gets the green light, you're looking at a timeline of several years. A good comparison is the Øresund link between Denmark and Sweden. It's only about 10 miles long and still took around 4 years to build, in an environment that is much easier to handle than the Red Sea. Then there's the price tag. Early numbers land around $4 billion, but that feels more like a starting guess than a final bill. If they run into problems, that figure will almost certainly climb. There's also one other problem that must be brought up: swimming right under the surface. The Strait of Tiran is home to dolphins, rays, sea turtles, and even sharks, including harmless reef sharks that glide around like they're protecting the beautiful, colorful corals below. These reefs aren't just decoration, they're some of the healthiest in the entire Red Sea. Scientists say that in parts of the northern Red Sea, some corals tolerate higher temperatures than many others around the world, which makes these reefs especially valuable from a climate resilience perspective. That means even a single mistake during construction could cloud the water with sediment, and that alone can smother corals like dust settling on wet paint. The same goes for noise, drilling, and ship movement. Reefs can't exactly move away if annoyed like fish can. Once they're damaged, it can take decades for them to grow back. That is, if they grow back. To avoid that, planners have to build in ways that keep the water as clear and calm as possible. Construction zones may need silt curtains to stop sediment from drifting away. Heavy equipment might have to avoid areas with dense coral clusters. Some sections could lean more toward tunnels instead of pillars to leave the seabed undisturbed. Every decision has to match the underwater map, not just the one on land. On top of that, the whole project would need constant supervision from scientists and inspectors. They would have to check how cloudy the water becomes and how marine animals behave during the work. If something looks off, the only responsible move is to slow down or change the method, instead of just rushing to finish faster and leaving the reef to pay the price. But if everything finally clicks into place, the payoff is massive. Right now, if you decide to skip the ferry and stay on land, the map punishes you. You have to loop all the way around the top of the Red Sea, through other countries on a drive more than 1,000 miles. All of that just to cross a stretch of water that is only a few miles wide at its narrowest point. It's like walking around the entire block just to knock on your neighbor's door. A permanent link would change this. Travel time drops, ports on both sides become easier to reach, and a drive from Africa to Asia suddenly feels as normal as crossing a long highway bridge. Not to mention the coolest part, which would be the view if they decided on the hybrid version. You begin your journey on the Sinai side, with the desert behind you and the Red Sea ahead. Instead of waiting in a ferry line, you roll onto a rising ramp while the water glimmers below. The road dips into a tunnel under a busy shipping lane, and before long, you're back in the sunlight on the other side, now on a different continent. The train version could feel even smoother. You find your seat, the doors close, and the train glides toward the crossing without any stop-and-go traffic. It slips into its own tunnel section, runs quietly under the sea, and pops back up on the Asian side before you have even finished scrolling your feed. For tourists, that could mean more resorts, more quick weekend trips, and a brand new continental hop that becomes a must-try experience. For delivery trucks, every hour saved is money earned. Even local towns would feel the change. They'd get more visitors, more trade, and bigger profits. A link like this doesn't just connect land. It connects economies, ports, and everyday life. And that's a giant opportunity, as long as the underwater world stays protected. There's a country that runs on volcanoes, rivers, and lakes for power. Sounds like a fantasy game setting, but it's all true. Welcome to New Zealand. This island nation already gets about 85% of its electricity from renewable resources like hydro, geothermal, and wind. That's impressive, but it's actually just getting started. Now, let's zoom in on a place called the South Taranaki Bight. It's a stretch of sea off the west coast of the North Island. At first glance, it looks just like any other tropical postcard location, but it's hiding New Zealand's clean energy jackpot. It's all about the South Taranaki Offshore Wind Project. This game changer in the world of green power will build wind turbines in the ocean, enough to generate almost 1 gigawatt of clean electricity. That's roughly enough to power over 430,000 homes. To put that into perspective, that's almost a quarter of all the households in New Zealand. If the country can pull this off, it won't just become greener. It'll kickstart an entirely new profitable industry: offshore wind. It means over 600 new jobs in construction, operations, and maintenance. And these jobs are future-proof. The kind that won't disappear as the world moves away from oil and gas. It also means more tech development for the country, and of course, more energy independence. Experts also believe it will secure more business investment in New Zealand, and the entire offshore wind sector should bring in around $30 billion to the country's GDP between now and 2050. The South Taranaki Bight is a perfect location for this project. It gets consistent, powerful winds, not stormy and chaotic, but steady and useful. That's exactly what you want for wind turbines. And the seabed here is deep, but not too deep, which is ideal for turbine platforms. They usually build traditional wind turbines on land or in shallow water where they can stand on firm foundations. But the ones planned here are offshore wind turbines, which means engineers can install them in deeper water, further from land, and in stronger wind zones. The electricity the turbines generate will move to a major onshore connection point through cables. From there, it will travel via national grid infrastructure to power homes, businesses, and industry. To make all this happen, the project team has already laid the groundwork. One of the coolest things they've done so far is a floating LiDAR campaign. LiDAR means light detection and ranging. And it's like radar, but with lasers. They put this high-tech gear on a floating buoy that stays in the ocean for months. It collects crazy precise data about wind speeds, wave patterns, sea temperature, currents. That's all the stuff you need to plan an offshore power plant. If the project works out, it will take New Zealand to a new green level. Right now, the country still uses fossil fuels during peak demand times or when the hydro lakes run low. Most of those fossil fuels come from overseas, and they're expensive, polluting, and unreliable. But if offshore wind goes big, it could plug those energy gaps, especially during winter when winds are stronger and electricity use spikes. And if New Zealand produces more clean energy than it needs, it could start exporting it as green hydrogen. It's hydrogen made from water using renewable electricity, which is really healthy for our planet. The South Taranaki offshore wind project, if all goes well, will be more than a local win. It'll be a blueprint, a model other regions of New Zealand could follow. There are wind-rich areas all around the country's coastline, and floating offshore technology makes them more accessible than ever. Some scientists believe New Zealand could build up to 8 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050. That's 8 times what's being planned in Taranaki right now. Imagine what that could do. Clean energy for the whole country, plus exports, plus global leadership in a brand new industry. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing, and there are some challenges on the way. First, there's marine life. Any large ocean project needs to be careful about how it affects whales, dolphins, fish, and seabirds. That's why scientists are studying marine baseline in the early planning stages to map out the local ecosystem and avoid any harm to it. They've already started this process in the Taranaki Bight and are gathering information so turbines can be placed where they'll do the least damage. There's also a high cost. Offshore wind is more expensive than onshore right now, but costs are dropping as the tech improves and scales up. Plus, the long-term benefits, cleaner air, local jobs, energy security, make it worth it. And then there are potential problems with authorities, local tribes, iwi, and the community. They all must support the project for it to become a reality, and it's not always working out. For example, when a 34-page review article about the risks of the wind farms for the environment came out, local authorities were reviewing it. But if everything goes well, construction in the South Taranaki Bight could begin in the late 2020s. Iceland is a great example of a country where green, renewable energy works and rules. 9 out of 10 homes in this country stay warm thanks to underground geothermal heat. Thanks to its wild geology with volcanoes, hot springs, and glaciers, Iceland is packed with natural energy. It sits right on a super active part of the Earth's crust, where 2 tectonic plates meet. That's why it has so much geothermal power and hot water just bubbles up from below. Glaciers cover 11% of the country, and when they melt in the warmer months, they feed rivers that flow down from the mountains. That water's energy is turned into hydropower. Plus, Iceland also has lots of wind power potential. They just haven't tapped into it much yet. The only major thing still using fossil fuels in Iceland is transport, like cars and planes. But it wasn't always this way. Not long ago, Iceland relied mostly on imported oil and coal, especially before the 1970s. Back then, they mostly used geothermal energy for bathing and washing clothes. The change came when oil prices went up like crazy, and Iceland realized importing fuel was just too risky and expensive. The country needed its own stable, affordable energy. One farmer figured out how to use natural hot water to heat his home. Local communities followed his lead, and soon towns were drilling deeper underground to get even hotter water. That hot water then went through pipes around neighborhoods and heated entire towns. It worked so well that the authorities set up a special fund to give out loans for geothermal drilling. Others started building small hydro plants. By 1950, Iceland had over 500 tiny hydropower stations powering farms and villages. Later, the authorities stepped in again to attract big international companies. If Iceland could offer cheap green power, maybe new industries would move in, create jobs, and help grow the economy. That plan worked, and it also helped build a country-wide power grid. And it was all possible, not just because Iceland has amazing natural resources, but also thanks to teamwork of the authorities and regular citizens. A lot of countries today face the same problems. Nepal, for example, has tons of hydropower potential, but needs investment. Countries in East Africa have loads of underground geothermal energy, but not enough training or tech to use it. Iceland has been sharing what they know for decades. Since 1979, over 1,000 people from other countries have gone there to study geothermal energy. Icelandic companies have helped build geothermal systems in more than 50 countries, including the world's biggest one in China, which now heats homes for over 1 million people. And you don't even need volcanoes to use geothermal energy. New technology means you can use lower temperatures to heat and cool buildings. Paris, for example, has one of Europe's largest geothermal heating systems. Around 25% of Europeans live in places where this tech could work. This area might just be the most important spot in America right now, as it is worth over $1 trillion. There's something incredibly valuable hidden right here at Thacker Pass, and it is going to shake things up, not just in Nevada, but in the U.S. economy and its global relations. The McDermott Caldera is a massive area, about 28 miles long by 22 miles wide, stretching across northern Nevada and southern Oregon. It's in Humboldt County, a quiet, rural place with just one main city that's going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. That's because they found white gold there. We're talking about lithium. And to explain why this metal is so important, we need a scale. On one side, we place a chunk of lithium, and on the other, an apple. What do you think will happen? If both have the same volume, the scale is going to tip toward the apple. That's because lithium is super light. Its density is about 0.3 ounces per cubic inch, which makes it the lightest solid you can find at room temperature. Lithium is also extremely reactive. That means it combines with other elements very easily, and it can catch fire just as easily. Mix it with water, fire. Expose it to air, yep, fire again. But when you combine its lightness with its high reactivity, you get a material that's perfect for batteries, like the one powering your smartphone, laptop, or even your electric car. Nevada's been hiding this treasure for about 16 million years. The McDermott Caldera used to be a volcanic hotspot, spewing molten rock and creating a huge lake filled with mineral-rich waters. Over time, that lake dried up, leaving behind thick layers of clay loaded with lithium. Right now, Thacker Pass Mine is sitting on one of the biggest untapped lithium reserves in the world, worth about $1.5 trillion. If everything goes as planned, they expect it to produce about 40,000 tons of high-quality lithium a year. And that's enough to make batteries for up to 800,000 electric cars. Like I mentioned earlier, this metal is the backbone of modern batteries. And with the world racing toward green energy, the demand for lithium is skyrocketing. Since 2020, its price has gone up more than 10 times, making it the most expensive battery metal in the world. That means it's way more expensive than magnesium, nickel, cobalt, and other materials used in rechargeable batteries. Right now, we're using about 1.16 million tons of lithium per year, and roughly 85% of it goes into making batteries, mostly for cars. Between 2030 and 2040, experts think we will need to double the money we're putting into production, from $94 billion to $188 billion. At the same time, investment in batteries will jump by over 200%, reaching $686 billion. Finally, by 2050, the demand for lithium is expected to be more than 10 times higher than what we're producing now. Sorry, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I just want to show how important Thacker Pass will be for the whole world. This mine is going to be key to keeping everything running. I mean, literally, since most of the future demand will be for things like cars, electric bikes, scooters, and renewable energy storage. Nevada could also be the epicenter of a global energy revolution, with the U.S. aiming to cut pollution by 50% by 2030. A big part of that is replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric ones. And to make that happen, America is going to need a whole lot more lithium than it's producing right now. Nowadays, most of the metal used in the United States come from countries like Chile and Argentina. So if America wants to be a leader in this market, it really needs to invest more and more in projects like Thacker Pass. But there's another challenge. Finding lithium in a mine is one thing, but refining it is another story. Just like diamonds are carefully cut and shaped to bring out their sparkle and sold in rings and necklaces, something similar needs to be done with lithium. The raw material that comes from the mines has to be refined into a pure form that can actually be used in things like batteries. And China pretty much dominates this part of the market, and they're responsible for about 75% of global lithium-ion battery production. In other words, it doesn't matter if a country finds this powerful metal on its land, it will probably still need China to help refine it. So, the US is eager to strengthen its supply chain. In fact, they're so excited about this possibility that authorities have invested over $2 billion in loans into the Nevada project. Because of that, Thacker Pass could make the US a leader in lithium production worldwide. If their estimates are right, the McDermott caldera could hold nearly half of the world's known lithium reserves. It would almost double the reserves found in Bolivia's salt flats, for example, which used to hold the record for the world's largest deposit. This discovery is about to change Humboldt County for good. Those quiet streets surrounded by nature will never feel the same again. The mine will need about 2,000 workers who will probably move there from other cities. Those workers will need houses, hospitals, schools for their kids, and all the necessary services. Do you see how it's like a ripple effect? For every person hired to work on the project during construction, 6 more people will get hired in the state to support them. Thacker Pass is also going to have a huge impact on the economy, not just in Nevada, but all across the country. People expect the mine to be active for 35 years, and each year it's expected to generate over $2 billion. But here's the thing. In Thacker Pass, they'll be extracting lithium from clay, and this process has never been done on such a huge scale before. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But if it works, it could completely change the industry. Big question. Who's interested in all this? Well, we've got 3 big companies eyeing the lithium market in the US. First, there's ExxonMobil. The oil giant wants to start producing lithium by 2027, and they have plans to become the top supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Then there's General Motors, the company behind big car brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac. They're so interested in this business that they agreed to pay $625 million for a 38% stake in Thacker Pass. And finally, Tesla. In 2023, they started building a factory in Texas to process lithium. It's all part of their plan to handle more of their supply chain themselves. Now that you know how important lithium is, you might be wondering, what if we run out? Well, that could happen, since it comes from mining and, just like gold, is a finite resource. But that doesn't mean we'd have to give up smartphones or electric cars. If we ever run out of this metal, we'd probably find new ways to produce batteries. In fact, some experts think thermal batteries could be the next big thing. They store extra energy from renewable resources like wind or solar power, which are very cheap. So they represent a new way of storing energy at a small fraction of the cost. Nowadays, they're primarily used for powering the production of steel, cement, and chemicals. Thermal batteries are also being used to heat and cool large buildings. However, more and more projects are focusing on bringing this technology into private spaces, like houses and apartments. Experts are optimistic that initiatives like these could make thermal batteries as well known as electric batteries, and they might soon become a regular part of our daily lives. Have you heard of Thacker Pass in Nevada? Probably not, but you should. There's something so valuable here that the US government invested around $2.26 billion to get it. No, it's not oil. That's a bit old-fashioned, huh? It's lithium, the lifeblood of electric vehicles, smartphones, and renewable energy storage. white gold, so to speak. And successfully mining it out from Thacker Pass could maybe reshuffle the global balance of power. But first of all, why here? Why Thacker Pass? Well, it sits on the edge of something called the McDermott Caldera. Millions of years ago, a supervolcano blew. The ground collapsed into a giant crater. Over time, water collected inside it, forming a shallow lake. Volcanic ash and rock from the surrounding cliffs slowly eroded into the lakebed, carrying with them all kinds of minerals, including lithium. As the lake dried up, those minerals stayed behind, building up thick layers of lithium-rich clay. And for decades, it just sat there, untouched. But now, with interest in electric vehicles being at an all-time high, this area in Nevada has suddenly become one of the most important pieces on the energy chessboard. Lithium ions are tiny, fast, really good at carrying electric charge inside a battery. Think of it like a game of ping pong happening in there. When you charge your phone or laptop, lithium ions zip from one side of the battery to the other. When you use your device, they bounce back the other way, creating the power that keeps your screen glowing. But the best part is that this process can go on for a very long time. Sometimes 15 years or even longer. That's why lithium is perfect for things we charge over and over, like smartphones, laptops, electric cars, and even huge power grids. Other metals? They're often heavier, slower, or wear out faster. Lithium's lightweight, fast-moving nature and incredible efficiency make it the go-to choice for our modern, always-on world. Right now, the world can't get enough lithium. Thanks to the electric vehicle boom and the global push for clean energy, demand is skyrocketing. In just the last year, global lithium use jumped by nearly 25%, and the curve is only going up. By 2030, demand could quadruple, and it's only going up from there. Electric vehicles are driving most of this. Around 85% of all lithium produced ends up in batteries, mostly for EVs. And with gas cars on the way out, every automaker is scrambling to lock in their lithium supply. But it's not just cars. We also need lithium for smartphones, laptops, smartwatches, tablets, power tools, drones, and backup power storage for homes and cities. No more stretching long cables over your yard as you mow your lawn. And let's not forget battery farms being built next to solar and wind farms. All of them rely on lithium to store excess energy when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. So the problem is, we're going to need a lot more lithium than we're currently producing. But that's not the only issue. Even if a country has lithium in the ground, that doesn't mean it controls the battery supply chain. Mining is just the first step. Then, lithium has to be processed into battery-grade material. And right now, China dominates that stage, refining around 70% of the world's supply. When the US, Chile, or Australia digs it up, it often ends up in Chinese facilities before reaching a battery factory. That's a strategic weak spot. If global trade gets disrupted because of geopolitics, shipping, or any other reason, the whole clean energy transition slows down. It's kind of like growing our own coffee beans but needing someone else to roast and brew them. You're still dependent, just at a different point in the process. That's why the US isn't just after more lithium. It wants the entire process, from mining to battery production, to happen right here at home. And Thacker Pass could be a big piece of that puzzle. With a $2.6 billion loan from the federal government, this isn't just a mining site. It's a test run for bringing important energy operations back to the US. If it goes well, America won't just be catching up, it might be in the game at full speed. So, what makes Thacker Pass different from other lithium sources? One word: clay. Most lithium comes from hard rock mines in Australia or salty brine fields in South America. Those methods are well established. But here, lithium is locked in claystone, a mix of ancient volcanic ash compressed over millions of years. That kind of deposit is rare and much harder to process. Getting lithium out of clay usually means cooking it at super high temperatures or soaking it in acid baths, which is not exactly cheap or eco-friendly. But if Lithium Americas pulled it off, it could unlock a whole new type of lithium mining, not just here, but across the western US. Early estimates say Thacker Pass could hold up enough lithium to power millions of EVs for decades, possibly the largest deposit in North America. That's why this project matters. It's not just about getting lithium. It's about proving that clay-based extraction can work. If it does, it opens up a new domestic supply. If it doesn't work, the US stays stuck in the same loop. Dig up some lithium, but still send it overseas to get refined and stay dependent. On the other hand, if Thacker Pass reaches full production, it won't just change where America gets lithium, it might reshape the entire region. The mine is expected to run for 40 years and could become one of Nevada's largest industrial projects. That means jobs, lots of them. Predictions say close to 2,000 people could be employed, not to mention the ripple effect: housing, schools, roads, hospitals, and support services. Economists call this the multiplier effect. One mine means more local jobs, waiters, teachers, grocery clerks. The whole town gets a boost. In a rural area like Humboldt County, that's a big deal. And it doesn't stop there. Having a domestic supply means prices stay more stable, sourcing is more secure, and we can increase EV and battery production all over the country. What used to be just a hole in the ground is turning into a national treasure for energy, jobs, and independence. Still think this is just me overhyping it? Let's talk money. The US Department of Energy just ruled out one of its biggest clean energy loans ever, $2.26 billion to get Thacker Pass going. General Motors is investing $650 million to get early access to the lithium they need for their EVs, making this their biggest raw materials investment ever. Tesla has already set up a lithium refinery in Texas so they can cut out the middleman. Even ExxonMobil is getting in on the action, planning to start lithium production by 2027 and aiming to be a major US supplier by 2030. When oil giants, car manufacturers, and the government are all putting their money on the same bet, that's definitely more than just a trend. That's a real change. So what happens if this lithium boom hits a wall? It's possible. Lithium is a limited resource, but the future doesn't rely on fresh mining. Battery recycling is getting better fast. Some analyses even project that future recycling could recover up to 90% of lithium, and new tech is making it cheaper and cleaner to do so. In theory, someday your dead phone battery might power someone's new car, and there's new battery tech on the horizon. Solid-state sodium-ion and thermal batteries are all in development. They're not ready to take over just yet, but they're coming. So no, we're not facing a lithium apocalypse, but we are in a race to mine smarter, recycle better, and stay ahead of future shortages. For now, lithium still runs the show. Somewhere out there in the Nevada desert, there's a dusty construction site that might just shape the future. Not just of batteries, but of global energy, manufacturing, and independence. Thacker Pass isn't just about digging for metal. It's about shaking up the supply chain, giving the economy a boost, and stepping into the clean tech game. If everything goes smoothly, this chunk of land could power millions of cars and help energize the country too. We just have to wait and see.
Picture a mountainous landscape covered with winding roads. It looks beautiful, but traveling along such routes takes far too much time. Do you know what they did in China, in the province of Guizhou? They simply blew up a massive mountain range and built a bridge. But this is not just a bridge. It's a true marvel of engineering. So let's take a drive across it. Locals say there's not a single flat piece of land in Guizhou. More than 90% of the region consists of mountains and hills. All of this is beautiful and picturesque, but it creates serious logistical problems. It's one thing to come here as a tourist and enjoy the views, and quite another to live here and drive to work every day. People had to take long routes along winding roads and steep slopes. A car trip could take around 2 hours. But engineers built a bridge that reduced this travel time to just 120 seconds. They literally split a mountain in half, creating a V-shaped cut through the rock. Then they laid a road through the mountain range and led it onto a high bridge spanning a massive canyon. The entire route is constructed so precisely that drivers barely notice the moment when the road through the mountain ends and the bridge begins. Its total length is 9,500 feet. That's roughly one-third of the height of Mount Everest. But the length is not as impressive as the height. The Huajiang Canyon Bridge is considered the highest bridge in the world. Just imagine driving at a height of about 2,000 feet above the ground. That's almost 6 times higher than the Statue of Liberty. But this isn't just a road, it's also a major tourist attraction. So, what can the tourists do on the bridge? Just walk and enjoy the view? Well, that's only a small part. There's a panoramic glass elevator that connects the highway with the base of the canyon. You can have lunch in a special 2-story cafe located inside one of the bridge towers, offering an incredible view. There's an artificial waterfall and a glass pedestrian walkway in the lower part of the parking area. But the coolest part is the extreme activities, like a platform for bungee jumping. You hook yourself to a bungee cord and leap into the abyss. No thanks. And for true adrenaline lovers, professional base jumping competitions are held here too. You leap from an enormous height with a parachute or a wingsuit and soar through the canyon at an incredible speed, like a hawk. It sounds amazing, and you probably already want to come here and post a few photos. But how did they build it, and how safe is it? From the outside, it looks like a thin metal strip suspended at a terrifying height. The entire structure is supported by steel cables and panels, with a total weight of about 22,000 tons. In fact, the amount of steel used to build this bridge is 3 times greater than that used to construct the Eiffel Tower. The main cables of the bridge are anchored directly into solid rock, so the bridge won't collapse. But if something does go wrong, the builders will know immediately. Fiber optic sensors are installed within the cables. In real time, they monitor tension and expansion in the steel. This means the bridge is under constant observation. If strong winds or other factors cause any issues, engineers will detect them in advance and fix the problem. But the most impressive part is that during construction, scientists took all turbulence zones into account. How did they manage that? Well, there's a phenomenon called the Venturi effect. When wind passes through a narrow space, such as a canyon or tunnel, it accelerates. In Gwangju Province, this effect is very common. Wind gusts in the Huajiang Canyon can reach speeds comparable to a high-speed train. So how did they manage to build a bridge under these conditions? Well, before construction began, engineers created a mock-up and tested it in a wind tunnel. Using special instruments, they studied wind directions and compiled a unique airflow map that allowed them to predict all turbulence zones. With this information, they moved on to the actual construction. Now, let's see another impressive bridge in China. This is the Sidu River Bridge, which spans the Sidu River, obviously. It was opened in 2009 and became part of an expanding highway system that connects the entire country. Of course, it's not as long or as tall as the Huajiang Bridge. It's supported by 2 8-shaped towers located on both sides of the roadway. Because of the suspension cables that dip down and rise again in the middle, the bridge looks, well, fragile. But don't judge by appearances. Engineers designed this structure to withstand a load of more than 43 million tons. That's equivalent to the weight of 430 massive aircraft carriers. So driving across it is completely safe. But do you know what the coolest part of this bridge is? To stretch the first pilot cable from one side to the other across a distance of more than 5,000 feet, builders used a rocket. You know those heist movies where the thieves release a grappling hook or a harpoon to cross from one building to another? The workers did something like that here. You probably had no idea that bridges could be built this way. Okay, let's now move from high-tech giant bridges to something much simpler and more dangerous. Think back to cartoons and movies about Mowgli and Tarzan. Remember how they swung through dense jungles, climbing vines and trees? Well, you can relive that experience if you travel to Ghana, where the Kakum Canopy Walk is located. So this is a series of rope bridges right inside a real jungle. Two Canadian engineers and several locals created this attraction in 1995 to draw tourists. At first glance, these bridges look like the vine and wood rope bridges you've seen in adventure movies. However, they are reinforced with steel cables, aluminum, and wooden planks. And they also have protective mesh barriers to prevent accidental falls. Good thing. The bridges hang from trees at a height of more than 130 feet, and their total length is about 1,000 feet. So you can truly feel like Tarzan. Meanwhile, the bridge at El Caminito del Rey in Malaga, Spain, runs between two cliffs. Only 3 feet wide, it's suspended 328 feet above the river. It's a very narrow path. You'll probably feel dizzy during the crossing. But don't worry, the bridge is equipped with high railings. It was originally built so workers at hydroelectric power stations could cross the mountainous terrain. Eventually, it became a local landmark, a small but incredibly cozy and picturesque bridge. You look at it, and you immediately want to walk across this stunning path. Me? Not so much. I don't like heights. Well, we started this video with one of the most technologically advanced bridges in the world. Let's finish with one of the most dangerous and extreme. Oh goody. It's called the Hussaini Suspension Bridge and is located in the Gilgit-Baltistan region in northern Pakistan. In this area, residents were cut off from the rest of the country because of the mountainous terrain and lack of roads. Wealthier locals could travel here by plane, but for everyone else, only pedestrian crossings were available. Then a highway was built here, along with several fragile wooden bridges, and the most famous of them is the Hussaini Bridge. If you find yourself at the very beginning of it, you will probably think twice before crossing this path. Now it looks much better, but in the past, this bridge had many planks missing, and strong winds shook the structure from side to side. There were no safety nets or high railings. In 2011, the bridge was destroyed by monsoon rains. After that, it was completely reconstructed. Now it consists of steel cables and sturdy wooden planks. And nearby, there are ziplining and sky cycling stations. It's become a popular tourist attraction. So, if you enjoy testing your nerves and are a fan of Indiana Jones, you will definitely like this place. Me? I'll just watch you.
Deep under Tennessee, massive worm-like drills are about to carve out a tunnel that should turn an hour-long traffic headache into a 10-minute joyride. It could be one of the craziest U.S. tunneling experiments in decades. But on the other side of the planet, Europe and Asia are actively testing the Hyperloop, the vacuum tube technology that seems out of this world. These are two totally different ideas, but they have the same goal: to make sci-fi travel a reality. For the first vision of the future, we have to focus on Nashville. The story here is about a blueprint for something called the Music City Loop. It's a proposal for a private paved underground highway meant for Tesla vehicles. The whole idea is point-to-point travel. You get in, pick a destination, and go straight there without stopping at every station. You can already ride a limited version in Las Vegas around the convention center. Nashville is supposed to be the city-scale test. The proposal is a direct underground link between Nashville International Airport and downtown. The new transit system is supposed to reduce a 9-mile, 40-minute trip to just around 8 minutes. If they pull this off, the experience should be truly futuristic. You hop in a car at the terminal, drop into a tunnel barely wider than the vehicle itself, and shoot through a pressurized tube. You bypass the gridlock, ignore the stoplights, and arrive at your hotel before people on the surface have even merged onto the highway. That all sounds amazing, but how close are we to this reality? The technology technically exists, but it has some massive issues. The system in Vegas is simple and it uses real drivers. To hit that 8-minute promise in Nashville, the cars can't be driven by humans. They'd have to drive themselves bumper to bumper at highway speeds inside a tunnel barely wider than the car. In a space that tight, human reflexes aren't fast enough. One hesitation or malfunction and the entire system turns into a traffic cork. So we need automated driving systems or really cool robots. But before we worry about AI-driven vehicles, there's one other issue. The real problem isn't the tunnel, it's the ground itself. Large parts of Tennessee sit on limestone, a rock that slowly dissolves like a sugar cube in water. Over time, that turns solid ground into something closer to Swiss cheese, filled with hidden caves and empty pockets. That's a problem for any tunneling project here. When a drill hits one of these hidden voids, it doesn't just slow down. It can suddenly break into the open air. Water can rush in. The machine can lose support beneath it. Tunneling here becomes a real-life game of minesweeper. One unfortunate turn and the machine can fail and sink. Even worse, the collapse can travel upward, opening a sinkhole at the surface, right in the middle of a busy city street. But if the ground is this dangerous, why build this in Tennessee? The reason is simple. Nashville is in the middle of a massive traffic crisis. It's one of the fastest growing cities in America, and the surface roads are already at their breaking point. The city is desperate enough to try anything, even if it means drilling through a geological minefield. Engineers see Tennessee as the ultimate final boss for tunneling. If they can prove that this high-speed system works in limestone full of hidden caves, they can prove it works anywhere on Earth. It's a high-stakes bet. Solve Nashville's gridlock or watch a multi-billion-dollar project disappear into a sinkhole. But while Americans are busy fighting the ground, other parts of the world are trying to avoid it altogether and basically fly through the air. This brings us to the second vision of the future, the Hyperloop. For years, experts rejected this concept as too complex, but development didn't stop. In fact, right now, test tracks in China and Europe are running successful experiments that are breaking speed records. Here is how it works. When you stick your hand out of a moving car, you feel the air push back. The faster you go, the harder it fights you. At extreme speeds, air becomes a solid wall. That invisible wall is what limits how fast trains and planes can go. The Hyperloop solves this by cheating. You build a sealed tube, suck all the air out to create a vacuum, and levitate a pod inside using magnets. With almost no air and no wheel friction, the pod doesn't really roll anymore. It glides through the tube. China is currently leading this race. A state-owned contractor recently sent a pod through a low-vacuum tube at 387 miles per hour. That's faster than the Shanghai Maglev, the fastest train in commercial service. And they aren't stopping there. The goal is to hit airplane-like speeds. But achieving those high-speed numbers isn't what's holding this technology back. For a long time, Hyperloop could only go straight, so networks were impossible. However, recently, engineers in the Netherlands found a way to switch lanes in a vacuum tube, bending what was once a single highway into a blueprint for a continent-spanning web of travel. It might sound like a small thing, but it's a major breakthrough for the whole industry. The European side has big ambitions. They're sketching out a massive network that looks like a subway map stretched across an entire continent. The goal is a web of vacuum tubes spanning more than 15,000 miles and linking around 130 major cities. The idea is to make short airplane flights unnecessary. You could live in Berlin and work in Paris and travel from place to place quicker than dealing with a downtown rush hour. In Switzerland, they're testing something called the infinite loop, a circular track that works like a hamster wheel for the pod, letting engineers simulate long-distance travel without building a massive straight tube. India is also building its own test tubes with plans aimed at connecting large cities like Mumbai and Pune and turning a miserable 3-hour drive into a 25-minute trip. It all sounds like the future is already here, but there's a reason we don't see hyperpooling pods around already. The engineering problems are huge. One of the biggest problems is the sun. When metal heats up, it expands, and over hundreds of miles, even sunlight can make a steel tube stretch. That's a serious issue when you're trying to keep a pod zooming through a perfectly aligned tube at super high speeds. Engineers basically have to create flexible sections that let the tube move without messing up the vacuum seal. And then there's safety. A Hyperloop tube is basically a spaceship stretched across the ground. Inside, there is almost no air. Outside, normal atmospheric pressure is constantly trying to find its way in. If the tube is damaged by an accident, a structural failure, or even debris, the air does not slowly leak inside. It explodes inward. That sudden rush creates a pressure wave that races down the tube and slams into everything in its path, including the pod itself. That's why Hyperloop safety has more in common with spacecraft engineering than traditional rail. Failure here is not gradual, it's instant. So who's more likely to win this battle in the near future? In the short term, the tunnel approach is more likely to win. It's still cars and tunnels, just faster. Even if the plan gets scaled back, parts of it can still be built and used, which makes it way more likely to show up first. Hyperloop is the opposite. The payoff is bigger, but it depends on multiple hard problems being solved at the same time. Perfect vacuum tubes, reliable switching, and safety systems that can handle worst-case failures. One weak link can shut the whole thing down, so it's harder to roll out quickly. Either one could change how we travel. Either way, the goal is simple: kill the commute. So what would you trust more, a deep tunnel carved through rock, or a vacuum tube above ground? In August 2025, Italy approved the construction of the Strait of Messina Bridge, a massive project expected to cost about $15.5 billion. The goal is to connect mainland Italy to the island of Sicily. The ferry crossing itself takes about 20 minutes, but during busy times, that short trip can turn into hours. So being able to just drive across could make life a whole lot easier for locals. We'll get into the ambitious details later, but let's start with a pretty important question. Why hasn't this bridge been built already? Well, because building it means tackling the Strait of Messina. And that's probably one of the toughest regions to build something on that scale. And there are 5 main reasons for that. First up, earthquakes. This bridge would be built right above a major fault line in one of the most seismically active areas in Europe. The Strait of Messina sits in a restless part of Earth's crust, where the African plate is pushing toward the Eurasian plate. And that pressure doesn't move in one clean direction. It squeezes the ground in some places, pulls it apart in others, and creates a complicated mess of forces underground. Those extreme interactions lead to serious seismic activity, the kind that can wipe out entire cities. In 1908, for example, a massive earthquake hit this region and triggered a tsunami, sending waves estimated at around 40 feet high. Together, these events nearly destroyed Messina, Reggio Calabria, and dozens of nearby coastal towns. And tragically, more than 100,000 people lost their lives. The problem is that kind of constant, dangerous ground movement could threaten the bridge's safety. I mean that during construction and even after it's finished. Second, the distance. At the closest point, Sicily is only about 2 miles from the mainland. If we were talking about 2 cities, that's nothing. But for a suspension bridge, it's like trying to stretch a rubber band across a stadium and hoping it never snaps. It requires serious next-level engineering. To put it in perspective, the biggest suspension bridge in the world today is the Çanakkale Bridge in Turkey. The distance between its 2 main towers, the part that hangs completely over the water, is a little over 1.2 miles. For the Italian bridge, that main span would be almost twice as long. Once it's finished, the Strait of Messina Bridge would be the longest single-span bridge in the world. Then, we've got the currents. The Strait of Messina has some of the strongest tidal currents in Europe. The water can move fast, change directions quickly, and even form whirlpools. Most of the time, the main flow goes from south to north, but there's also a smaller current that runs the other way. They usually switch every 6 hours, and that makes any construction in or near the water a real struggle. The 4th big challenge is the wind. The strait acts like a funnel, meaning that strong, messy winds get pushed through it. And with very long suspension bridges, wind isn't just annoying. It can make the whole structure shake in dangerous ways. The strongest wind recorded there in more than 20 years of monitoring was about 67 miles per hour. So yes, this new bridge would have to handle even stronger winds. And finally, the last big challenge is the environment. This stretch of sea is one of 3 of Europe's main highways for migrating birds, like the red-footed falcon or the honey buzzard. And that really matters because their survival depends on it. For many of these birds, the migration trip is already brutal. They have to cross 2 huge natural barriers, the Mediterranean Sea and the Sahara Desert. There's nowhere to rest on the water, and the desert is too hot and too long for many species to survive without stopping. So, Italy becomes one of their last safe places to land, eat, and recover before they take on the hardest parts of the journey. But things like noise and bright lights can disturb them, and because this area has strong legal protections for wildlife, projects often run into legal roadblocks. This new bridge plan is no exception. Environmental groups have already raised concerns, saying the project doesn't clearly show how they will avoid damaging nature. So there are problems with the distance, earthquakes, strong winds, powerful currents, and on top of that, birds might not like this bridge at all. Sounds like a lot to handle, right? But apparently the designers and authorities think this new plan can deal with all of it. This huge bridge is expected to be finished sometime between 2032 and 2033, and if everything goes as planned, it would become the biggest infrastructure project in the Western world. Supporters say it could create about 120,000 jobs each year and give a real boost to southern Italy. From a technical point of view, it's honestly fascinating. It will be massive. In fact, it would be the biggest suspension bridge in the world. Its pillars would be so tall, they'd rise higher than the top floors of the Empire State Building. It's also designed to handle a lot of traffic. It will have 3 car lanes in each direction, plus a double railway line in the middle. In theory, it could carry around 6,000 cars an hour and about 200 trains a day. Even though the project has officially got the green light, many Sicilians are still doubtful. And honestly, you can't blame them. This bridge has a reputation for being a never-ending project that keeps coming back, then stalling again. You know, people have been dreaming up the Messina Bridge for a long time. In fact, plans go all the way back to the Roman era. At that time, they wanted to link the 2 sides with a chain of connected boats. But since that kind of bridge wouldn't be permanent, they gave up on it. We can say that the modern saga really took off in the 1960s. They hoped that connecting Sicily more directly to the mainland would bring in the kind of international investment that other parts of Italy had been getting for years. So they started throwing around all kinds of ideas. Some plans were pretty wild, like underwater tubes, floating supports, even a bridge with a middle section that could spin around. But none of those options were truly realistic. And that's the thing. Since 1969, the Strait of Messina Bridge project has been approved, then cancelled over and over again. Now you might be wondering, okay, but why is this still so hard? Well, the distance is a huge deal. Like you already know, it would be the first time anyone's built a suspended bridge this massive. But from an engineering standpoint, it's doable. Then you've got the natural obstacles we talked about earlier, earthquakes, strong currents, and all that. But even those shouldn't be that impossible anymore. In Roman times, yeah, it would have been a disaster. A bridge made with barrels and boats wouldn't stand a chance. But today, we have the technology. Countries like Japan and Turkey have already built major bridges in highly active earthquake zones. And we don't even have to look that far. In the US, the Golden Gate Bridge sits close to the San Andreas Fault, which puts it at risk of a major quake. But engineers have strengthened it with systems designed to withstand the strongest earthquakes we can realistically expect. So, what really stands in the way now is more than the human obstacles, things like the massive price tag, tricky financing, and worries about the project being poorly managed. Okay, but since the project was recently approved, they can start finally building, right? Approval is a huge step, sure, but it doesn't mean they can immediately start pouring concrete in the strait. The project is on pause again. Italy's Court of Auditors have asked for more time to go through all the paperwork for something this huge. Still, the authorities say they can fix those issues and answer the court's questions. So the idea is still alive. It's just moving very slowly. And maybe one day, the Strait of Messina Bridge will finally move from paper to real life.
You are looking at a remarkable idea, for this is the story of the miracle seam.
This massive lake in California is worth $540 billion, as it holds enough lithium to power over 30 trillion iPhones. That's way more than experts predicted, making it one of the biggest lithium reserves ever. This finding could revolutionize the US economy, but a major challenge is still standing in the way. If it's not solved, all that money will stay buried forever. First things first, lithium. This metal is so valuable that people call it white gold, and it's unbelievably light. In fact, it's the lightest solid on Earth at room temperature. It was discovered by a Swedish chemist in 1817, and honestly, since then, we didn't really care much about lithium. This poor metal was ignored for centuries because it didn't seem to have any practical use in everyday life. I mean, sure, it's light, it's white, it's shiny. But what could we actually do with it? At some point, though, another trait of this metal started to stand out: its reactivity. Basically, it bonds really easily with other elements. But that also means something else. It can catch fire in seconds. For example, if you expose it to air, it goes through a wild oxidization reaction, and before you know it, boom! Flames everywhere. This might sound like danger to you, but to scientists, it screamed Eureka! Because being super light and super reactive actually makes it the perfect material for batteries. And you get why that's a big deal nowadays, right? Batteries power almost everything around us, like smartphones, cars, and even small airplanes. Since everyone suddenly wants lithium, demand has skyrocketed, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. Back in 2021, for example, the world produced about 540,000 tons of it. But by 2030, predictions say demand could soar past 3 million tons. And here's the problem: lithium is a finite resource. There are only about 100 lithium mines in the world, mostly in Australia, Chile, and China. Sure, supply is expected to grow, but demand is climbing much faster. That means we could be facing a shortage soon. Lithium mines can keep up with today's demand, but they won't be able to do that for many more years. So that's why finding new lithium reserves today is basically like winning the lottery. In this case, the United States is one of the lucky winners. First, there's the Thacker Pass mine. This spot in Nevada might hold the largest untapped lithium reserves on the planet. To put it in perspective, some estimates say it could supply up to 1/4 of the world's lithium demand. We're talking as much as 40 million tons of this precious metal, and that might be worth over $500 billion. Right there, they'll be extracting lithium from clay. This might be challenging, since this process has never been done on such a huge scale before, but it's doable. A couple of years ago, the United States found another big win in the lithium game: the Salton Sea. This is a huge, shallow lake located in Southern California's Imperial County. At first, they announced that this spot could hold over 3.4 million tons of lithium underground. That would be enough to make more than 375 million batteries for electric vehicles. That was already huge, but then, more recently, specialists realized they had made a mistake. Actually, a good mistake. The amount of lithium there is likely much, much higher. It could hold 18 million tons of it. Now, the Salton Sea is being considered the 5th largest lithium deposit in the world. This could be a real game changer. The United States is betting big on this mineral, hoping it'll help keep the country's economy strong for decades to come. So, finding this second big source of lithium was a huge relief. It means America is one step closer to relying less on other countries. And, by the way, most of its lithium right now comes from Chile.
We refer to as the Saudi Arabia of lithium.
Of course, California is thrilled about this, seeing it as a potential economic windfall. The region is already being called the Saudi Arabia of lithium, or Lithium Valley, because of its potential to dominate the battery supply chain. And if it works out, it'll be a huge benefit for the state. Apparently, Authorities plan to use 80% of the money from lithium extraction for local development and infrastructure. The idea is to upgrade roads, schools, and other public services. That could create a lot of new jobs for Imperial County, which is considered one of California's poorest regions. Big question: if the lithium is hiding under the lake, can they even get it out? Well, yes, at least in theory. There are two main ways companies usually extract lithium. The first is the old-school method, open pit mining, where the rock is dug up, crushed, and processed. That's what they do at Thacker Pass, for example. They use massive hydraulic shovels to dig the metal out of the clay. Then there are evaporation ponds. Here, they pump lithium-rich brine to the surface and let the water evaporate, leaving the metal behind. The problem with both methods is that they use tons of water and can cause a lot of contamination and waste. At the Salton Sea in California, things work a little differently. Instead of giant pits or evaporation ponds, companies are using the area's natural geothermal power to pull it out in a cleaner way. This method is called direct lithium extraction. And here's how it works. Near the lake, there are already 11 geothermal power plants that pump up super hot mineral-rich brine from underground. Normally, that brine is just used to make steam, which spins turbines to generate electricity. But now, companies are figuring out how to pull the lithium out of that same brine before sending it back underground. Since they're already pumping the brine for energy, collecting the lithium doesn't need any extra digging or big ponds. So it avoids most of the water waste and pollution you get with old methods. It's like getting clean energy and battery materials at the same time, but with way less impact on the environment. This method sounds brilliant and totally doable, but it also comes with challenges that won't be easy to overcome. Sure, people call it environmentally friendly, but that's only when you compare it to other ways of getting lithium. This method still raises concerns about water use. People in California are already dealing with shortages, and large-scale lithium extraction could put even more pressure on the region's limited water supply. The Salton Sea itself is shrinking fast. Water levels have dropped by more than 9 feet over the past 25 years. That creates a huge problem. Less water means more exposed lakebed. And the sediments there can contain harmful materials. As the lake shrinks, that exposed lakebed dries out and turns to dust. And that dust doesn't just sit there. The wind picks it up and blows it into the air. Now, the Salton Sea's shrinking shoreline is releasing toxic dust into the air. And that dust has been linked to increasing rates of respiratory problems among local residents. Authorities are already taking steps to reverse the situation by adding water to the dry parts of the Salton Sea. They're filling shallow ponds near the lake to make new wetlands. Their goal is to create a safe habitat for fish and birds, and to help keep that toxic dust under control. Some people worry that digging up all this white gold could make the Salton Sea shrink even faster and undo years of restoration work. For now, studies show geothermal plants only use about 4% of the region's water supply, but researchers still don't know if expanding these operations could end up making the water problem worse. So, what happens next? It's too soon to say, but one thing's for sure: we will need a lot more research to understand what this all means, not just for the Salton Sea, but for the future of the U.S. economy.
So a few years ago, in 2019, folks in Australia said they liked an old idea with a new twist, using extra floodwater from the north to help dry areas in the west and south. This plan got the name of the New Brainfield Scheme. It was based on an old idea from the 1930s. The idea was to catch floodwater from the north and move it to the south and west. But the original plan never actually happened. Over the years, lots of experts said it wouldn't work. They thought it was too expensive and too tricky to build, even though it could potentially help fix drought problems in dry parts of Queensland. The original idea appeared a long time ago, when an engineer named John Brainfield got a big idea. He wanted to take floodwater from rivers in northern Queensland and send it inland to Lake Erie, one of the driest spots in Australia. He planned to use dams, pumps, really big pipes, and even tunnels to transport all that water over the Great Dividing Range, a big mountain range in Australia. The biggest dam would have been called Hell's Gate, and Branfield wanted it twice as tall as what it was originally planned. This way, pumps and gravity could help move the water over the Great Dividing Range. The water would then flow south and help irrigate farmland near places like Hughenden. It would change the weather, make it rain more, and turn the dry land into green farms. Eventually, it would reach Lake Erie, turning the desert into a green growing area. That way, Australia could grow more food, sell it to other countries, and make more jobs. He hoped that the area could turn into a food bowl for the country. For some time, people talked about the plan a lot. They loved the idea. They thought it could change how farming worked. And some even believed that nature had already planned for the land to be filled with water. Dry rivers and lake beds were just waiting to be used. They even said that rains fell on the wrong side of the mountains, and Branfield's plan could fix that. But when the authorities looked into this idea, they found big problems, and the main one was that the plan would cost too much. Plus, there weren't enough scientists or engineers to do a full investigation. The land was too dry and harsh. No one was sure it would even work, like how much water would really get there. Plus, some of Branfield's measurements were wrong, especially the dam heights. So, in 1947, they officially shut the project down, claiming that even if they built the project, it wouldn't be worth it. After all, even places next to oceans, like parts of Chile, still stay bone dry, so a big lake might not result in more rain. And still, in 2019, one political party brought the idea back with an updated version called the new Branfield Scheme. They wanted to try it again, but with some changes to make it work better. Their plan included the following steps. Take water from the South Johnstone, Tully, Herbert, and Burdekin rivers. Store that water using a big dam called Hell's Gate Dam, but this time they wanted to make the dam twice as tall as in the original plan. Let the water flow through tunnels using gravity instead of using lots of pumps. Move the water under the mountains and into the Warrego River in southern Queensland. Use the water to grow crops in dry places south and west of Hughenden, a huge area even bigger than Tasmania, eventually turning it into a food bowl. At the same time, they didn't say how much the whole project would cost, but they promised to spend $20 million to let Australia's National Science Agency check if the plan could work. Those innovative ideas sounded good, but for over 80 years, loads of experts kept saying, "Nope, it won't work." Why? Branfield said his idea would cost £40 million back in 1941. That's about $3.2 billion today. But the new version of the plan might cost more than $15 billion and take over 10 years to build. Also, people who care about nature are worried. They explain that taking water away from where it usually goes could hurt animals and plants. It might let invasive plants and animals spread to new places. It might mess up rivers and oceans where fish and other animals live. It could even hurt towns and businesses near the coast that depend on those natural water flows. Still, some people really believed in the idea and thought it was worth doing, especially to help farmers and fix drought problems. However, in 2022, the government decided to stop trying to fix the drought in western Queensland with the Branfield Scheme. Experts looked closely at the plan and said it just wouldn't work. The problem? There's not enough water all the time to make it happen. Apparently, the new cost of the plan would have been over $30 billion. That's a huge amount of money. You could buy yourself a fleet of private jets and luxurious yachts, and more. So experts said you'd need lots and lots of water to spend that kind of money, but the water just isn't there. Now, instead of one huge project, they suggested doing smaller water projects closer to where the rain and waterfalls are. These smaller projects, called mini Branfield grids, would be in 4 places along the Queensland coast. Those little grids could share water when some places had more or less rain. Other scientists looked at the plan too, and they agreed. Even if things went super well, the Branfield scheme would still cause problems and cost way too much, while the mini water grids project looks more plausible. They think the dry parts west of the mountains will do better without the full-scale Brandfield scheme. There are easier and cheaper ways to help those places grow and get water. So the big plan was dropped, and now they're looking at smarter, smaller ideas to help with water and farming. And the matter is quite urgent. Australia is a super dry place, one of the driest places people actually live in. When there's a drought, there's not much water around. That means farms don't grow as much food, and that can cause a lot of problems. In the future, droughts are likely to happen more often and be worse. That's why it's necessary to start getting ready now. Experts are working on something called the Drought Resilience Mission, trying to figure out how to deal with droughts better in the future. One of them looked at how much droughts actually cost Australia. His research shows that droughts can hurt a lot of things – farms, jobs, towns, and even the whole country. When there's no rain for a really long time, some towns can actually run out of water. That's called day zero. It's when the taps in people's houses get turned off because there's just no water left. In 2020, a town in Queensland called Stanthorpe hit day zero. About 50 other towns were really close too. When such a situation happens, the only way to get water is by bringing it in with trucks, and that's super expensive. Stanthorpe had to get around 20 trucks of water every day for a year and a half. It cost them about $800,000 every month. In the end, they spent over $14 million just to have water. Luckily, it started raining again and filled the dams back up. But the authorities are working on ways to stop this kind of thing from happening again. They want to help towns be ready so they never run out of water like that. Because drought just doesn't mess with water, it can also mess with people's health. When everything dries up, plants vanish and the soil gets loose. Then the wind picks it up and makes huge dust storms. Those dust clouds can blow really far, even into such big cities as Sydney. That's what happened in 2018. The air got so bad that kids, older people, and anyone with breathing problems had to be extremely careful. The dust ruined some crops and made different foods, even fruit, unsafe to eat.
Deep in Tajikistan's wild, jagged mountains, they're building something massive, so huge it might glow from space. So, should we call it the new Great Wall of China? While the ancient wall stretches for thousands of miles, this dam concentrates all the resources into a single 1,100-foot-tall mountain of rock. Right now, thousands of workers and giant machines are building one of the craziest mega projects on the entire planet, the Rogun Dam. A few questions have to be asked. Why? What for? And for how much? And most importantly, with earthquakes happening all the time, is it actually going to hold up, or is it just a multi-billion-dollar fantasy waiting to collapse? To get the full picture, we need to understand the wild landscape of Tajikistan. This isn't flat farmland. About 90% of the country is covered by towering, jagged mountains. It's one of the world's most mountainous countries. These peaks are covered in thick glaciers and heavy snow caps all year round. But those beautiful mountains hide a serious roaring power. Every single spring and summer, when the sun finally comes out, all of that snow and ice begins to melt at a rapid pace. It rushes down the steep mountain slopes, gaining incredible speed and momentum, eventually becoming the mighty Vaksh River. That's millions of gallons of freezing, muddy water crashing through narrow valleys. For generations, this massive volume of uncontrolled water has been a terrifying problem for the people living there. Without anything to slow it down, the raging river would cause devastating seasonal floods. And it isn't about a few puddles here and there. In bad years, these massive walls of water and mud wiped out dozens of villages within hours. Thousands of people were displaced, and damage costs hit tens of millions of dollars. It was a wild, untamed force of nature that desperately needed a giant stop sign, or to be put on a leash, literally. You might be surprised, but the Rogun Dam is not a brand new idea. Actually, the dream of building a mega dam in this exact spot has been floating around for decades. Construction originally started a very long time ago, but due to severe instability and a sudden massive lack of funding, the enormous project had to be completely abandoned. It just sat there for years, an unfinished dream, gathering dust and weeds in the mountains. In the early 1990s, the situation went from bad to absolutely terrible, not only because of the weather. At one point, the region was hit by extreme poverty and the political situation was highly unstable. Between 1992 and 1997, a massive number of people ended up fleeing the country, fearing for their lives due to local conflicts. It wasn't just social and economic chaos. A completely unexpected violent flood rushed through the valley and destroyed the early construction sites. The rushing water practically erased years of hard work in the blink of an eye. Most people would have just packed up their tools and given up right then and there, but the stubborn and resilient people of Tajikistan simply refused to forget about the Rogun Dam. After decades of frustrating economic struggles, the country managed to finally resume the work consistently. But every megaproject casts a massive shadow, and the same thing happened here. It wasn't just a story of national triumph. To fill a reservoir this large, entire valleys had to be flooded, and that meant forcing as many as 60,000 people to leave their homes. Experts are also worrying about environmental risks to the regional water supply, but people of Tajikistan just wouldn't let it go. The dam is rising, but the price tag might be terrifying. Now, let's talk numbers because the size of this thing is hard to wrap your head around. When it's fully completed, the Rogun Dam will reach a record-breaking height of nearly 1,100 feet. Do you need a better perspective? If you took the Eiffel Tower from Paris and placed it next to this dam, the dam would still rise above it. Once it's finished, it will proudly claim the title of the tallest dam on the planet. This extreme height is an absolute necessity. The specific valley where the dam is being built is incredibly deep and narrow, shaped like a giant letter V. To create a reservoir large enough to safely hold billions of cubic feet of water, the dam simply has no choice but to reach way up into the sky. During the warm summer months, it will act like a giant bathtub, catching all that melting glacier water and completely stopping dangerous seasonal floods. But there is another crucial reason for this towering height. In Tajikistan, winters are freezing cold. Rivers freeze solid, and the country has historically faced severe power shortages. Not exactly a fun way to spend the winter. By building the dam so incredibly high, they can store a massive artificial ocean of water during the summer and then slowly release it all winter long to keep power turbines spinning. But hold on, it's not that simple. The Rogun Dam is located in one of the most dangerous, highly seismic zones on the entire planet. That means powerful earthquakes are a very real, frequent threat there. If engineers just poured a giant solid wall of stiff concrete, an earthquake could easily crack it open. Imagine taking a dry cracker and trying to bend it. It'll snap immediately. So how do you safely build the tallest dam on Earth right in the middle of an earthquake zone? You ditch the concrete. To solve this puzzle, the engineers opted for something called an earth-filled dam. Instead of stiff concrete, they're essentially building an artificial mountain using millions of tons of compacted rocks, heavy gravel, and soil. The number of giant dump trucks working on this site day and night is enormous. But the real engineering magic happens right in the very center. Hidden deep inside this mountain of rock is a special, incredibly thick core made entirely of clay. Why clay? Do you remember Play-Doh? It can change shape without breaking. Clay works the same way. Because tightly compacted clay is naturally waterproof and highly flexible, this structure acts exactly like a giant shock absorber. When an earthquake hits and the ground starts to shake, the dam doesn't crack. The rocks shift slightly, the thick clay core compresses, and the entire massive structure simply adapts to violent ground movements. It smoothly absorbs all of the dangerous seismic energy without ever collapsing. We should simply call it an engineering masterpiece. Seriously, hats off to those guys. And it's pricey. Completing this monumental beast of a dam is estimated to cost well over $6 billion. So, with a price tag like that, is it actually worth all that effort and cash? The answer is yes. When it becomes fully operational, the Rogun Dam is going to be an absolute powerhouse. Deep inside the Rocky Mountain, workers are carefully installing 6 massive turbines. When the stored water rushes through them, they will generate 3,600 megawatts of electricity. That is enough clean, renewable energy to completely change the destiny of the entire nation. Because this country is facing a wild contrast, while parts of Dushanbe, the capital city, look amazing with massive, brightly lit modern buildings and non-stop power, the situation in remote mountain villages is very different. For the people of rural Tajikistan, this mega dam means the end of those deeply frustrating winter blackouts where families still have to rely on candles and heavy blankets just to survive the freezing cold. But the amazing benefits do not stop there. The dam will produce so much energy that Tajikistan won't be able to use it all. They will have a massive surplus of clean energy. This means exporting power, creating a brand new source of national income. Talk about a game changer. It will effortlessly bring exciting new jobs, better infrastructure, and a massive boost to the entire country's future. Now you know that the Rogan Dam is much more than just a giant pile of rocks blocking a river. By the time it's finished, workers will have moved over 2.65 billion cubic feet of soil and stone, enough to fill about 30 Great Pyramids of Giza. The project is so massive that you can actually see the construction from space. Saudi Arabia is slowly running out of water. There are no permanent rivers or lakes. Rain barely shows up. The scorching sun is a thief that evaporates billions of gallons every year before anyone can use them. But engineers have a solution. They started building an invisible river beneath the sand. A colossal underground water network stretching more than 7,000 miles, cutting through mountains and shifting dunes, flowing in total darkness to keep the country alive. If we were to put an uncovered Olympic swimming pool in the middle of the Arabian dunes, evaporation alone would steal 40,000 gallons a week. In 4 months, that pool would have nothing but dust in it. Now, imagine that loss on a reservoir that is miles long. In this climate, storing water above ground is a donation to the sun. So engineers came up with the idea of hiding the water underground, basically creating an artificial river. There's no sunlight or wind. Temperatures stay far more stable. It's certainly not really a river. It's actually a completely sealed, colossal infrastructure system. Massive pipes buried deep below, acting as river channels, with pumps pushing the water where gravity can't. If you count the whole thing, it's a record-sized system, with about 8,800 miles of pipelines. These pipes are huge. Some of the main lines are so wide that if they were empty, you could drive an ATV through them. But the real challenge is pushing 238 million gallons of water through those pipes every single day in the direction you want it to go. They rely on pumping stations with power plant level muscle with nearly 600,000 horsepower just to move water through the desert. All this massive underground pipeline is connected to the largest drinking water storage system on Earth. Almost 2.3 billion gallons are stored in huge reserve tanks all over the country. That's like 3,600 Olympic pools, enough to keep multiple cities running for a few days in case something breaks. So they build all that, but where does the water come from? It's still one of the driest countries in the world. To keep all that going, you need a lot of H2O flowing. Saudi Arabia doesn't get to collect river water because there isn't any. Instead of waiting for rain that may or may not show up, the source has to come from somewhere that never runs out. That means all the way to the coast. On one side, they've got the Red Sea. On the other, the Persian Gulf. But this is seawater. You can't drink it. The salt overloads your kidneys and your body has to use extra water just to flush that salt out, which can leave you even more dehydrated. That's why any water pulled from the sea has to go through desalination plants. That's the step where the salt gets stripped out and the water becomes usable. But here is the catch. Desalination is expensive and it uses a ridiculous amount of energy. Right now, Saudi Arabia burns massive amounts of oil just to run these water factories. So to get around this, engineers are turning to the very thing that evaporates water in the first place, the sun. One proposed plan is a giant solar desalination sphere on the coast, sealed tight like a sci-fi greenhouse. Around it, a field of mirrors tracks the sun and bounces that light onto the dome to heat it up. Sunlight becomes the burner, the dome becomes the kettle. Seawater goes in, steam comes out, and that steam gets cooled back into fresh water. If this works as intended, it's a game changer for the region. Right now, making fresh water means burning fuel to power the process. Using sunlight instead cuts that link. The sun shows up for work for free every single day, so producing drinkable water wastes fewer resources, which will make water cheaper. Of course, this isn't as simple as it sounds, even if they have the technology. Those mirrors would have to stay sparkling clean to work, and KSA is a place where sand and dust are the default setting. Sandstorms are common and can damage the equipment, so how do you keep the glass clean when the air is made of sandpaper? You definitely don't want to waste water washing them all the time. The solution could be an army of robots, autonomous cleaning bots that slide across the mirrors using static electricity and microfiber brushes to wipe away the dust while everyone sleeps. By sunrise, everything is sparkling clean again. Saudi Arabia already uses similar systems at large solar parks like the Sakaka. This might be one of the coolest power plants in the world, looking like a sea of glass in the middle of a desert. It's made of more than 1.2 million solar panels covering enough land to fit over 1,000 NFL football fields. All of these are getting dusted non-stop. But even with all that tech on the ground, there's still a big what if. What if the pumps break? What if the pipes get damaged? Engineers were thinking, well, we can't wait for the rain, so what if we force the rain somehow? That's how they came up with cloud seeding. Clouds are basically massive floating collections of tiny water droplets or ice crystals. However, sometimes those droplets are just too small and light to fall. They just hang out up there. But Saudi engineers found a way to give those tiny droplets a nudge. They fly planes high into the sky, right into the clouds. Then they shoot special flares out of the plane's engines. These flares release tiny particles, usually a substance called silver iodide. These particles act like magnets for moisture. They pull tiny droplets together until they get heavy enough to fall. It's like giving the cloud a push. They're not creating water out of nothing, but they are encouraging the water that's already there to fall. Saudi Arabia has been actively doing this for years. In 2024 alone, they conducted hundreds of these cloud seeding missions. They're literally playing with the weather to get the water they need. But that's not the wildest idea. A few decades ago, a Saudi prince wanted to do the unthinkable: tow an iceberg from Antarctica. We're talking about wrapping a literal mountain of ice in special insulation and pulling it thousands of miles across the ocean using super tugboats. The goal was to park it off the coast of Saudi Arabia and melt it down for fresh water. They actually funded serious scientific studies to see if it was possible. Dragging a giant ice cube across the scorching hot equator turns out to be a bad idea. Scientists realized the iceberg would melt long before it arrived, so they scrapped the plan, which is unfortunate because that would seriously make for a great movie. Getting the water is just the beginning. The final main quest is not only about water, it's about terraforming. Saudi Arabia has launched the ultimate massive project called the Green Initiative. The goal is almost impossible to imagine. Plant 10 billion trees. They want to take the yellow sands of the desert and turn them green. And that invisible river we talked about earlier is the backbone of the whole plan. They aren't using precious fresh water for this, they're using gray water. Water that has already been used in cities. Instead of dumping it, they treat it, recycle it, and pump it out to the desert to feed these new forests. If it works, it will create a massive cooling cycle. More trees mean cooler ground, which helps trap moisture and could even bring back natural rain. They're basically trying to engineer their own climate. The cost of all this is off the charts, but when you mix a massive budget with a real fear of running dry, you get results that sound like science fiction. Saudi Arabia has turned itself into a full-scale testing ground, trying out solutions the rest of the world may need sooner than it expects. It's almost a movie plot. a country sitting on oceans of oil, racing to turn its deserts green before the world stops caring about oil at all. Off the coast of Virginia, the ocean floor was recently rearranged on purpose. Massive ships vacuumed up millions of tons of sand, carved shapes that looked as if a giant ice cream scoop had scraped the seabed. It wasn't a geological disaster. It was the first phase of one of the boldest and largest engineering projects in U.S. history. To understand why engineers are literally reshaping the seafloor, you have to look at the map. This is Hampton Roads, Virginia. This region is shaped by water. Two major cities, Norfolk and Hampton, face each other across a busy harbor. For decades, the main way to travel between them was the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel System, or HRBT, built back in the 1950s. It's basically a bridge that ducks underwater only at the ship channel, so cargo and Navy ships can pass above it. That system is now overwhelmed. At peak demand, close to 100,000 vehicles try to pass through this single crossing in a day, pushing it far beyond what it was designed to handle. The road was designed for a different era, when cars were bigger but the traffic was lighter. Today, it can regularly turn into a parking lot in the middle of the sea. But this problem goes beyond missed dinners and being late for work. It is also a national security crisis. Norfolk is home to the largest naval base on the planet. This is where the United States parks its expensive aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. The base depends on roads. If a crisis happens, the Navy needs to move fast, and if the road is clogged, they'll get stuck in traffic. That makes the stakes incredibly high. At first, the fix sounds obvious. Too many cars? Build a bigger bridge. But Hampton Roads isn't a quiet river. Those aircraft carriers and cargo ships need a wide, unobstructed path to the ocean. A bridge becomes a low ceiling. You can't raise the bridge without blocking traffic for years, and you can't lower it without trapping the fleet. So, engineers chose the only option left: go underneath and create a unique expansion. The official price tag for this job sits at $3.8 billion. The goal is to create two new underwater tubes right next to the old ones, but the logistics here make it difficult. There's not enough land to start digging. The machine needs a dry launch pad to start the dig and a receiving pit to catch it on the other side. That's why the engineers decided to manufacture the land themselves. They brought in dredging ships that operate like floating vacuum cleaners. These vessels lower a suction head to the seafloor to inhale the seabed before pumping that mud water mix through miles of floating pipes. The output is amazing. The pipes shoot the mix up in high arcs that look like a cool, messy rainbow before it builds up on the surface. This process moved enough earth to expand the artificial islands by 15 acres, creating solid ground where there used to be open water. However, this was not just a simple vacuum job. This harbor has been a naval hub for centuries. The seabed is a graveyard of lost history. Dredging crews had to watch out for unexploded stuff hiding in the mud. We're talking about discarded explosives from centuries ago. Sucking something like that into a high-pressure pipe is a quick way to ruin the schedule. Once that new land was solid enough to stand on, the construction team needed a mechanical beast capable of eating through it. That's why they brought in a huge worm-like machine called Mary. Mary is way more than just a supergiant drill. She is a factory on wheels that stretches longer than a football field and weighs over 9 million pounds, roughly the weight of stacking 9 fully loaded jumbo jets on top of each other. At the front of the machine sits a massive cutter head, 46 feet wide, covered in steel teeth that spin to chew through the soil while the rest of the machine builds the tunnel behind it. Building a machine this large costs $70 million, and she had to be shipped from Germany in pieces just to reach the job site. But the coolest part of this machine isn't the steel. It's the human element inside it. Those cutting teeth don't last forever. Grinding through wet sand and silt wears them down, and eventually, someone has to go in and change them. You can't just crack open a hatch down there. You're deep under the harbor with tons of water and mud pressing in from every direction. Instead, crews work inside sealed, pressurized sections of the machine. Many of the tools can be reached from inside the TBM itself, but it's still tight, loud, and unforgiving. every move has to be planned. Systems have to stay carefully controlled. The work is slow, deliberate, and tightly monitored because mistakes here are expensive and dangerous. Digging with Mary was a dangerous balancing act. The ground under the harbor isn't solid rock. It's soft, wet silt that behaves like toothpaste. This created a constant nightmare for the pilots driving the machine. If Mary pushed forward too fast, she would over-excavate, meaning she would suck in too much dirt. This creates a void underground that travels up to the surface. On land, that makes a pothole. In the ocean, it creates a massive sinkhole that could swallow the water above and flood the tunnel. But if she moved too slowly, the sheer weight of the Atlantic Ocean would crush the tunnel face inward. To stop the ocean from winning, Mary used a pressurized slurry shield to push back against the mud, keeping the tunnel face stable while her cutters chewed forward. As she advanced, robotic arms installed concrete rings behind her, turning a hole in the mud into a rigid, waterproof tube in seconds. Steering her was another headache. Mary had no windshield. The pilots were driving blind through the dark. They had to rely on lasers and computers to navigate a strict curve deep underground. They had to hit a tiny target miles away. If they drifted off course by even a few inches, the tunnel wouldn't connect, and the project would be a failure. Mary launched in 2023, and despite all the challenges, after 29 months, she made her final breakthrough in September 2025. While it feels like the finish line, it's really the end of just one phase. Boring the tunnel creates the hollow space, but crews still have to build the tunnel's nervous system. They are currently installing the roadway, power, and lighting. But the most critical piece of tech is invisible to most drivers. It's the ventilation. The biggest danger in an underwater tunnel isn't a leak, it's fire. If a car catches fire deep underground, the smoke has nowhere to go. To solve this, engineers are installing massive jet fans that look like aircraft engines strapped to the ceiling. In an emergency, these fans spin up to hurricane speeds to suck the smoke out and push fresh air in, keeping the escape routes clear. It takes all this complex tech to make an underwater tube feel like a normal drive rather than a survival mission. But the transformation isn't just happening underwater. Above the surface, crews are rebuilding miles of highway to connect the new tubes to the rest of the world. When the sand settles and the ribbon is finally cut, the landscape of Virginia will look deceptively similar. The water will still be there, the ships will still sail, but underneath the surface, the dynamic of the region will have fundamentally shifted. For the commuter, it means getting out of the traffic jam. For the Pentagon, it means the assurance that the Atlantic Fleet is never boxed in. But for the engineers, this project is a testament to something bigger. It's proof that not only we can build structures over obstacles, but we can also successfully transform the Earth to fit our needs. Engineers moved islands, vacuumed the seafloor, and bored through miles of unstable slime to create a path where nature never intended one to be. It's a fight against geology and a massive investment in national security. But in Hampton Roads, where the ocean meets the asphalt, it proves that the map is only permanent until it's time for another redraw. Welcome to Gelapoo Mindfulness City, also known as the Anti-Dubai. Because instead of massive glass skyscrapers, supercars, and neon lights everywhere, Bhutan wants to create a city that blends in with nature. It will run along the rivers, leave room for wildlife, and feel calm and walkable. This isn't some cute little eco-pilot though. It's a billion-dollar mega project with some serious next-gen tech in the mix. The plan was announced at the end of 2023 as Bhutan's biggest, boldest plan to create jobs, spark new ideas, and build a modern future. It will be constructed near the town of Gelapoo, and it will cover about 965 square miles, which is roughly 3 times the size of Singapore. What's especially interesting is the way they imagine the city itself. It's designed to stay low, open, and spread out. One of the coolest ideas is a set of 9 bridges that people won't just pass through, they'll actually live and work there. Yep, each bridge is planned like a full piece of the city. Just to give you a few examples, one bridge will include the new international airport, another will host a university, and another will serve as a hydroelectric dam. From there, the city spreads out into 11 long, ribbon-like neighborhoods that follow the natural shape of the land. They're designed to curve around all 35 rivers and streams in the area, instead of cutting them off. Now, when we hear about rivers running through a city, we usually think about flooding, right? And yes, that's a real concern there. But what's smart is that the plan works with rivers, not against them. Along the water, they want to build paddy fields in step-like terraces that go down the hills into the valley. These terraces slow down floodwater and help hold it back. At the same time, they work like green pathways for nature. Animals can still move through the area, and even elephant routes stay open, so wildlife isn't pushed out as the city grows. Each neighborhood will be laid out like a mandala, with the same pattern repeating around a central public space. That's where people can meet up, take walks, and spend time together. The city is meant to stay close to nature, so there won't be any buildings taller than the trees. Near the wildlife sanctuaries and farmlands, the structures will be minimal and mostly residential, so those areas stay quiet and protected. Now, all of this already sounds like a super ambitious and fascinating architecture project. But what about the mindfulness part? Here's the idea. This city is supposed to reflect Bhutan's happiness-first philosophy at its core. They say Gelugpa Mindfulness City will focus not just on economic growth, but also on the personal well-being of every person who lives there. They want residents to live in harmony with nature, while still enjoying a modern high-tech city. And they're planning some pretty unique things to make that real. Residents and visitors will be able to relax and meditate in green spaces designed especially for that. There will be community activities, ecotourism, and lots of ways to slow down. The food is meant to be fully organic, electricity will come from renewable sources, and the whole city will be designed for cycling and walking, not for cars. As you've probably noticed, this isn't a small eco-experiment. And of course, just because it won't look as flashy or high-tech as Dubai, doesn't mean it's going to be cheap. Estimates say it will cost around $100 billion. Yep, billion, with a B. But you might be wondering, why spend so much money on this? Is it really gonna be worth it? Well, yes. And that's because this new mindfulness city might end up saving the whole country. You see, we're talking about Bhutan, a South Asian nation that is a little bigger than Maryland. It's home to fewer than 800,000 people, and about 70% of the country is covered in forest. It's a stunning remote place, what a lot of people describe as a kind of Shangri-La tucked into the Himalayas. You might know Bhutan as the land of the thunder dragon and also as the kingdom of happiness. And there's a reason for that. This nation is known for measuring progress using something called Gross National Happiness, or GNH. Basically, money and GDP come second. They put things like spiritual well-being, cultural preservation, and environmental protection first. In Bhutan, schools and hospitals don't come with a price tag, and happiness isn't just a personal feeling. It is a national goal and a top priority. And that's not the only thing that makes this place so special. Ever since the country unified in the 17th century, they've done everything they can to protect their identity and thrive with very little outside influence. They didn't even allow tourists in until the 1970s, and TV only arrived in 1999. Actually, in that same year, Bhutan banned plastic bags, and it made headlines around the world. So even with how fast and high-tech the world is today, the country still feels peaceful and unchanged. Visitors say it feels like you've stepped into another time. And a big reason is the architecture, as most buildings are still made in their traditional style. They also follow some pretty unique rules for living in harmony with nature. For example, they're surrounded by gorgeous mountains, but you're not allowed to climb them. That's because the mountains are considered sacred, seen as the home of deities. For them, nature isn't something you conquer, it's something you respect and protect. But things changed when this fairy tale kingdom met the modern world. Even though Bhutan is often seen as one of the happiest countries on Earth, people are leaving in unprecedented numbers. Many are moving abroad for better opportunities, and a lot of them don't come back. Estimates say around 9% of the population has left in just the last few years, mostly young people. And Australia is a big example of that. The number of Bhutanese moving there doubled between 2020 and 2024. A big part of this is happening because unemployment is rising. Tourism is one of the country's main sources of income, but it's been going downhill since we all know what happened in early 2020. In 2023, for example, Bhutan welcomed only about a third of the visitors it had in 2019. And when tourism drops that hard, it hits people directly. Lots of workers lose their jobs and fewer new opportunities show up. So even if people feel happy living in Bhutan, a lot of them still feel pushed to live in search of a more stable future. But the authorities believe they can bring them back by creating good, well-paid jobs at home. And that's precisely where Gelugpa Mindfulness City comes in. In the long run, they want this place to become a clean tech and innovation hub, bringing in global investment and giving Bhutan's economy a real lift. If everything goes as planned, it will be absolutely huge. So, tell me, are you convinced by the idea of a mindfulness city? If so, you're probably already thinking, okay, when can I move? Well, I have to warn you, this won't pop up overnight. A project this big needs time. Gelugpa Mindfulness City will be built in phases with private partners helping fund and create everything the city needs. Roads, bridges, an airport, homes, schools, hospitals, and all kinds of businesses. The goal is that around 150,000 people could be living there within the first 7 to 10 years. And once the whole project is finished, they expect more than 1 million residents to move in. Estimates show it will probably take around 20 years for the city to be fully completed. But honestly, that wait might be totally worth it. Bhutan hopes this place won't just attract locals back home, but also draw in international investors. And if everything works fine, this city could reshape the country's economy and open the door to a stronger, more hopeful future for Bhutan.
You have about $130 million. What would you do with it? Fly into space or buy an island? There are many ways you can spend this much money, but one anonymous investor used it to build an extravagant underwater city. The project is not finished yet, and a lot of people are currently working really hard to make this crazy idea come to life. If all goes well, in the near future, living under the sea may become a reality. In the past century, there was a limestone quarry near the Welsh border in England. In the 1990s, it became flooded and turned into a lake 260 feet deep. Now, there's a large construction project going on around it. Trucks transport materials and people in overalls construct huge modules that look like giant futuristic submarines. These modules are called Sentinels, and they will become the buildings of a small underwater city. Builders and engineers create durable stainless steel materials that allow these houses to withstand a depth of up to 650 feet. This is the upper limit of the twilight zone, where very little sunlight penetrates. Large squid and other creatures live in this zone. Imagine waking up in an underwater hotel room and seeing a giant squid staring at you from the dark. Or even worse, you see a huge eye watching you as you wake up. This could happen if Sentinels were successfully installed in the depths of the ocean. Meanwhile, let's return to our project on a small lake. The project is called Deep. Its goal is to make life underwater as comfortable as possible. Inside living modules, builders install bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, and observation windows. People will access them using small submarines. However, it's not as simple as calling a taxi. To live underwater, you need to train under the guidance of experienced instructors to test yourself in underwater life simulators. The cost of living there will likely be expensive, but it's worth it. At least you will be well fed. A chef will develop a special menu, and all food will be stored in vacuum-sealed bags to preserve its flavor and nutrients. It all sounds great, but there's a question. Who is financing this project? No one knows the answer. Deep is funded by a secret investor who has already spent more than $100 million. Interestingly, this is not the first attempt to create an underwater dwelling. For example, Jacques-Yves Cousteau, a famous diver explorer, first created the Conshelf 1 underwater house in 1962. This was a steel cylinder located at a depth of 30 feet, where 2 divers lived for a week. In 1970, several women also spent 14 days underwater in the Caribbean Sea at a depth of 50 feet. The aim of that project was to study human psychology in a cramped environment, similar to that of a spaceship. Unsurprisingly, that project was partly funded by NASA. Okay, we have windows overlooking marine life, delicious food, underwater parties, and solitude away from civilization. All these things sound cool, but if we put aside the fun part for a moment, is there any real benefit to it? Oh yeah, ocean exploration. Many marine biologists believe that the best way to explore the ocean is from within. Diving doesn't help much since divers are limited by time and body needs. They can stay underwater for only about an hour and a half at a time. Underwater cities could allow us to live underwater for months. But the most important thing is long-term observation of marine life in its natural habitat. In the mid-1990s, a group of researchers wanted to study the development and nutrition of corals. They brought them to the lab for testing and found out that corals reacted differently to tests in artificial environments than in the ocean. Their behavior in a laboratory setting was different from their behavior in the wild. Underwater cities could also provide work for archaeologists who study the remains of ships that have sunk throughout history. Plus, such cities could help protect us from future disasters. In the event of a catastrophe like an earthquake, tsunami, or volcanic eruption, scientists and engineers could build water-based shelters like the Sub-Biosphere 2 project to provide refuge for people. These circular structures could sink into the ocean and give shelter for up to 50 or 100 people, allowing them to wait out the disaster from a safe distance. Underwater cities could be an excellent solution to overpopulation, but there are some downsides. We already pollute the world's oceans, and what if we literally lived inside them? It's one thing to use labs to study marine life, but it's another to build hotels for vacationers. One such hotel, called the Water Discus, is a building at a depth of no more than 32 feet. It will have 21 rooms and a restaurant with coral reef views. While the conditions seem comfortable, some experts worry that staying there for long periods could be harmful because of the lack of sunlight. Nevertheless, it would be interesting to stay there for a week and see how it feels. The most challenging aspect of creating such laboratories, hotels, and bunkers is ensuring a reliable life support and safety system. It's crucial that the air, humidity, and temperature be as comfortable as possible for people to live in these structures. However, this requires a significant amount of energy. Currently, all modern underwater buildings rely on external sources of energy located on the surface. But scientists plan to make future underwater projects fully autonomous, using kinetic energy from waves and powerful solar panels to generate power. It's also important to create the right structure for these buildings. Rather than covering an underwater city with a giant bubble, it's more efficient to create several large housing modules. Each module should consist of steel, glass, and special cement. Also, the depth shouldn't exceed 1,000 feet, since a deeper location would require thicker walls because of high water pressure. To load and move these residential modules safely, engineers can use ballast tanks. These are large containers filled with water, which are used to pull the modules down deep into the ocean. Once in place, engineers can release the water from the tanks and fill them with air, causing the house to float back to the surface. And what about fresh air? Fish extract oxygen from the water using their gills, but this method is obviously not suitable for humans. Therefore, we need to deliver air from the surface. It can be piped into the city and mixed with a special substance called sodasorb, which reacts with carbon dioxide and removes it. It would be great if we could generate oxygen inside our underwater cities rather than relying on other sources. This would require farms and plants that can produce oxygen through photosynthesis. But instead of sunlight, these plants would use artificial light. If we talk about complete autonomy, people could get food from the water at any moment, put on scuba gear, a mask, and an oxygen tank, and leave the hotel through an airlock. Use harpoons and fishing nets to catch dinner. Remember to check your oxygen reserves and don't swim for too long. Frying fish in a pan won't work because of strong odors. In an underwater dwelling, air is static like in an airplane cabin, so odors become stronger. Maybe in the future, engineers will create a dedicated cooking area, but for now, you'll have to rely on canned and dehydrated food. If you get bored, go for an underwater walk. Instead of carrying oxygen tanks, use hollow tubes connecting your mask to an air source inside your home. But don't forget that you can't go too far because the length of the tube is limited. Air, food, safe construction. What else? Drinking water. In the future, scientists may create filters in these hotels that desalinate salt water. This water can be extracted from the condensation inside the hotel, as well as from human secretions. Don't be surprised. Astronauts, for example, have been using special technology to filter their liquids and turn them into drinking water for a long time.
This catapult-like system on the moon might bring us limitless energy. It's a launch system concept that was recently proposed by the Chinese scientists. It would work like a hammer throw, spinning a launch arm that flings objects. This arm is supposed to be about 165 feet long. It will accelerate until it reaches the moon's escape velocity, and then whoosh, the capsule is sent into space. This crazy idea will cost around $18 billion. Ooh, pricey. But trust me, it's totally going to be worth it. The system would be powered by solar panels and nuclear energy. It could also recover more than 70% of the energy used after each launch. The moon has a very weak gravity. There's also barely any atmosphere, so the air doesn't weigh you down. This makes it so much easier to launch stuff there. But why do we even need this? The main purpose is to transport helium-3. It's a really cool isotope of helium, and one of the most insane things about it is that it could become fuel for nuclear fission. This is the same process that happens in stars, including our Sun. If we manage to recreate nuclear fusion here, on Earth, we can make it a clean and basically limitless source of energy for power plants. But helium-3 is super rare on Earth. We can sometimes find it in volcanic rock formations on the ocean floor. That's because it's a product of another rare element called tritium, the element we usually make in nuclear reactors and put in cool stuff like glow-in-the-dark paint. But the catch of tritium is that it takes forever to decay and turn into helium-3. Now, there's a bunch of helium-3 on the moon, around 1 million tons. Just 20 tons of helium-3 could meet China's yearly electricity needs. In fact, lunar soil has enough helium-3 to power the entire world for over 1,000 years. But why is there so much of helium-3 on the moon and barely none on our planet? Well, that's because helium-3 comes from the sun and travels in solar winds. Solar winds are like streams of dangerous particles. They're super radioactive. Our planet's thick atmosphere and magnetic field serve as a shield for us. They almost fully protect us from those particles. But, unfortunately, they also prevent the good stuff like helium-3 from getting here. The moon's atmospheric shields are super thin though, so it's under a constant shower of solar winds. So, helium-3 accumulated there over billions of years, and now it's just scattered around there. But mining it and bringing back to Earth is no easy feat. It's super expensive. Just think about it. Rockets need tons of fuel to break free from gravity. Every single bolt and screw on the spacecraft must be engineered to survive extreme conditions, like radiation. Not to mention, you need a team of rocket scientists, literally working around the clock to make sure nothing goes wrong. You can't call a repair guy if something breaks on the moon. So generally, it costs about $500,000 to send 1 pound of payload to our satellite. That's based on estimates from NASA. To get some idea, let's calculate how much it would cost to send an apple to the moon. A typical apple weighs about 0.4 pounds. So that funny mission would be at least $200,000. Now, for comparison, the Chinese launch system weighs around 80 tons. Another problem is that the lunar surface is pretty harsh on the equipment, like the freakish lunar dust, for example. You might recall this small thing that happened in the 60s called the moon landings. But when the Apollo astronauts came back from the moon, they found something weird was happening to them. Their throats were sore and their eyes watered. Luckily, it wasn't some scary moon sickness. Turns out, there's a lot of lunar dust clinging to their spacesuits. This dust seems harmless, but it's made up of sharp and abrasive particles, much smaller than a human hair, yet sharp like glass. It contains silicate, a thing that can cause severe lung problems on Earth and is a common issue for miners. So it caused a lunar hay fever. At least that's how NASA astronaut Harrison Schmitt called it. All 12 astronauts who walked on the moon were then sneezing and experiencing nasal congestion. Sometimes it took days to fade away. The dust even got inside their spacecraft, smelling like burnt gunpowder. This nasty stuff can be harmful to both humans and equipment. It managed to damage spacesuit boots and even ruin the seals on the containers used to bring back samples during the Apollo missions. As we mentioned, they're glass-sharp and jagged, so they start scratching, grinding, and wearing down any surfaces they come in contact with. They don't care if it's metal, glass, or humans. And since there's so much dust, this causes equipment to malfunction and fail quite quickly. And that's just one of the possible hurdles with lunar missions. So scientists really need to come up with some weird ideas to get that precious helium-3. The Chinese scientist project looks like a weird sci-fi invention, but it's a cost-effective way to transport materials back to us. It could throw stuff to Earth twice a day, and it would be 90% cheaper than current methods. Since it only needs electricity and no fuel, the system would be small and easy to set up. Besides the beloved helium-3, this catapult would also help advance technologies in space mining and heavy launch vehicles. No lunar dust scares this thing. It should last for at least 20 years. It would need to be transported to the moon using China's super heavy lift rocket. But the idea is far from new. There was a novel called The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert A. Heinlein. In the story, there's a lunar colony that uses an electromagnetic catapult to send weed and water ice back to Earth. It gets quite wild when the colonists, known as loonies, eventually take control of this catapult. They threaten to launch rocks at Earth unless their colony is recognized as an independent world. Sounds kind of funny, but a large rock, if thrown at us from the moon, could wipe out a city. The damage would be like from a meteorite strike, with fires, houses destroyed, and worse. But scientists have been talking about this catapult idea for a while. For decades, they were trying to find a way to use electromagnetic systems to send resources from the moon to Earth. There are also some challenges. For example, scientists forgot to mention how exactly helium-3 would be extracted from the lunar soil. Installing this launch system on the moon's rugged surface would be difficult as well. Also, they would need to make sure that the system remains stable at high speeds and that it could withstand the moon's extreme temperature changes, cosmic rays, and intense solar radiation. So, it would take some time to develop. China hopes to have the key components of the system ready by 2030. The full-scale operations might start by 2045. China has tons of plans for the moon. For example, they want to build a research station at its south pole by 2035. But China's not the only one in this space race. Considering that NASA plans to send humans on Mars by that time, oh boy, the 2030s will be a crazy decade for space exploration. There's also an American startup that's part of the lunar economy. The ones that plan to land astronauts on the moon have people actually living on our satellite in a decade or two. One of the goals of this colony is to boost economic growth and create new jobs. Most of them will likely involve some mining activities. And if there'd be 2 space colonies, well, they'll have to figure something out.
The Museum of Bad Art, or MOBA in short, used to be located in an old basement in Dedham, Massachusetts. And currently, you can find it in Somerville, Massachusetts. It only accepts art pieces that are so bad you just can't ignore them. Their collection includes portraits. Get it? That's the name they use for portraits. And some really outrageous landscapes. There's also the MOBA Zoo, featuring really unfortunate depictions of our furry friends. Like any self-respecting museum, they also have a gift shop where you can purchase some prints, postcards, or even a coffee mug with your favorite bad art. Speaking of really unique experiences, how would you like to spend time in jail without actually having to break the law? In Scotland, there's a place called Inverary Jail. It's an actual former prison that dates back to the 1800s, where tourists can experience 19th century jail life. There are characters dressed in authentic costumes that make it even more realistic. You can participate in courtroom trials and work with other inmates. In Suwon, South Korea, visitors can check out a theme park built around the history and culture of toilets. It was opened in memory of the former city mayor. He dedicated a lot of time and local resources to improving the city's public toilets and sewer system. It goes without saying that this place has a lot of toilet-themed art documenting the world's restroom culture. You'll find everything here, from men's and women's bathroom signs from around the globe to photographs of public toilets, and information about the importance of sanitary facilities. A designer store in the middle of the desert? If you happen to pass by Texas, you'll find a Prada store on an empty stretch of US 90 outside of the small town of Valentine, about 150 miles from El Paso. Two Berlin artists wanted to offer Texans the high-end experience, sort of. That's because the curious store has no door to access it, and its 20 left-foot shoes and 6 purses set on display. Surprisingly, the store was built with the blessing of Miuccia Prada herself, the head designer of the brand. Can you imagine living in a city where you have your own beach access to a lagoon that leads directly into the sea? That might be possible in the near future, if you don't mind relocating to Sabah Al Ahmad Sea City in Kiran, Kuwait. This engineering masterpiece was inaugurated in 2016. Its canals form 120 miles of artificial shoreline. All those human-made islands were built by excavating large channels in the desert rather than using reclaimed land, as was done previously in similar conditions. Before visiting this museum, you have to take off the shoes you've been wearing and put on special slippers that won't damage the artwork, because it's everywhere. It's called the Electric Ladyland, and it's the world's first museum of fluorescent art. The owner, Nick Palladino, exhibits here a lot of his own sculptures and even naturally luminescent rocks, along with other human-made glowing objects. One portion of this art gallery features paintings that shift color under UV light. The soundtrack is awesome too. You'll hear a lot of the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix. Upside-down houses seem to be quite a tourist attraction. You can find them in many countries, such as Japan, Poland, Germany, and Austria. One of the best ones to visit is located in Malaysia. It's called Rumah Terbalik Upside Down House. It uses recycled wood and other natural materials to recreate a local atmosphere. It was opened back in 2012 and soon became a popular tourist attraction with its upside-down furniture and wacky household appliances. There's even an upside-down car parked in the garage. A spa-themed park located in Hakone, Japan, provides tourists with an interesting array of hot springs. Some of them are quite unusual, especially the unique noodle bar, where visitors can literally swim in a bowl of ramen. It's not for tasting though, since it's still a public space. The Dead Marsh in Namibia offers a cool experience which makes you think you're frozen in time. Since there's no water here and temperatures are really high, this sparse forest is made out of skeleton trees that haven't been alive for more than 600 years. Since there's little to no humidity, the remaining vegetation cannot fall apart, leaving behind this odd natural landscape. It even became the set for some sci-fi movies. Spoiler alert! But the paper house located north of Boston, Massachusetts is actually a house made completely out of paper, furniture and all. It was built by Ellis F. Stenman, the man behind the machine that makes paper clips. Back in the 1920s, he basically wanted a 2-room summer home for him and his family. It took him over 20 years to complete, since the house was made of about 100,000 newspapers. Just make sure you don't bring any lighters. Cappadocia Cave Hotel in Turkey is a great place to stay for both history buffs and people who are into modern and luxurious decor. All of the rooms and suites are located inside the local cave dwellings dating back to the Roman and Byzantine periods. Cappadocia is also famous for its hot air balloon tours. One of the reasons is because it's not very windy here and the view of the city is really beautiful, especially during sunset. The small Indian town of Deshnok certainly wouldn't be on your vacation list if you don't like rats. A 14th century legend has it that the rats living here are to be protected and nurtured. Over 20,000 rats live inside this famous location these days. Since they've been living there for so long, the rats are quite friendly with both locals and tourists. The Battle of the Oranges is a local festival happening each year in late February in a small Italian town of Ivrea. The local myth has it that the Carnaval de Ivrea started back in the Middle Ages. That's when locals stood against a hated ruler by throwing oranges at him in protest. It sounds like fun to join thousands of participants gathering there for 3 days to throw some oranges. Just don't forget to duck. Socotra Island in Yemen was separated from mainland Africa more than 6 million years ago. That's probably one of the reasons why this secluded island looks more like the set of a fantasy movie than a real location. The island has some incredible and unique flora. Most of the plants and trees that grow here are not found anywhere else in the world. Like, for example, the ancient twisted dragon's blood tree or the bulbous bottle tree. Japan's Tashirojima is rightly nicknamed Cat Island, since it has a population of 100,000 humans and almost 4 times as many felines. The cats were initially brought here since the island produced a lot of silk, and mice like silkworms a lot. More so, the cats were seen as a sign of good luck. There are even cat-shaped cabins for tourists to settle in, and it probably goes without saying that dogs aren't allowed there. There are about 1,700 weirdly shaped hills in the middle of Bohol Island in the Philippines. They're so unique that you might easily mistake them for human-made. They are, however, part of the UNESCO heritage, since they are naturally made out of coral deposits and shaped by rainwater erosion. Because of their quirky look, they earned the nickname of Chocolate Hills, since during the dry season, their exterior goes from lush green to brown. Big fan of cascading pools? Then make sure to check out another UNESCO World Heritage Site located in Pamukkale, Turkey. The name means Cotton Castle in Turkish. It's set in the ancient ruins of Hierapolis, a city that was built around the pools. Their crystal clear waters cascade from natural springs down to white travertine terraces. The view is so beautiful that you won't know what to do at first. Take a picture or jump in.
China plans on building a train that will connect mainland China to the United States. The track will start in the northeast region and then make its way through Siberia in eastern Russia. It will then go under the sea through the Bering Strait into Alaska in the US through a 125-mile underwater tunnel. It will then flow across Canada's Yukon Mountains and British Columbia and finally to the United States. And once there, it can connect to every major train station in America. The total distance, around 8,000 miles. This China, Russia, Canada, and US network was conceived in 2014 by a group of Chinese engineers who had a vision of a major transcontinental train track. They claim that if the project is built, then you will need just 2 days for a trip from China to America without having to go to the airport. A train ride is much smoother than a plane and offers people better opportunities to experience traveling near the ground rather than up in the air. And the trip itself can boost tourism across 4 countries. Even though a plane ride from China to the US takes just 14 hours, depending on where you're coming from, anyone will get to experience the joys of looking out of the window and seeing yourself whisk through the land. This new rail system will be 1,800 miles longer than the Trans-Siberian Railroad, which is the longest railroad in the world, and the tunnel itself will be 4 times longer than the English Channel. If the project gets the green light, then it would cost a total of $200 billion. Building on the main surface won't be so much of a hassle and won't be as challenging as one would expect. But the tunnel in the Bering Strait will require many skilled and experienced engineers to construct it. And they have already figured out how they're going to do it. It will be divided into 3 levels with 2-way traffic. The upper level will accommodate the high-speed trains, while the bottom level will be for the slow-moving cargo and passengers, while the middle level will be reserved for emergencies. The cargo train can move up to 100 million tons of cargo, which makes up 8% of the world's freight cargo between Europe, Russia, China, Japan, South Korea, Canada, and the United States. Passengers wanting to leave from Alaska to Russia and vice versa will only have to take a 20-minute high-speed train ride to their destination. The tunnel alone in the Bering Strait will cost around $35 billion. From start to finish, it could take anywhere between 12 to 15 years to complete. The project will involve many international firms and construction companies to help out with completing it. This could possibly be the most expensive project in history if funded properly. And it has to be strong enough to handle the icy waters in the Bering Strait and the strong waves around it. The China, Russia, Canada, America railway line would be the most expensive and ambitious mega project in history and would take years to complete. But according to some resources, China is confident that they have the technology necessary to do something of this scale. It will change the transportation industry forever and increase tourism across all continents. If this project is going to be built, then it would be technically possible to travel from a train station in Portugal all the way to the United States. Europe has an impressive train network that's all connected to each other. From Eastern Europe to Central Asia, you could take a train from certain countries until you end up in China. For the past 20 years, China's speedy rail network has grown incredibly. It has the world's largest high-speed rail network that covers more than 23,000 miles. Based in Shanghai, it's also the fastest commercially operating train, which reaches speeds up to 270 miles per hour. So once in China, you can get on any train and speed off to wherever you want to. It will be the ultimate traveling experience to only travel by train from continent to continent. There won't be any need to travel by an airplane. So if you have fear of flying, let's say, then this will be the perfect way for you to go by. But building train tunnels underwater isn't easy. The best engineers have to figure out all the risks beforehand. The Channel Tunnel, for example, is an underwater train that takes you from London to Paris in just 2.5 hours at cruising speed. The train is highly equipped with the most advanced technology in the market to ensure comfortable travel. If you have any work to do, then you can just pop open your laptop and connect to the Wi-Fi. Want to take a break? Just head to the cafe for a quick drink and enjoy the lounge feel and the great beverages. And if you feel like watching a movie or catching up on your favorite TV series, then the train offers that too. You won't feel the time pass since you can just relax in luxurious leather seats in business premier class. Train travels at around 186 miles per hour and is considered to be the world's longest underwater tunnel, considering that most of it is submerged. The tunnel itself is 31 miles long and costs $6.3 billion. It began construction in 1988 and was completed 6 years later in 1994. It was considered to be one of the 7 wonders of the modern world, in line with the Empire State Building in New York, or the Panama Canal, or the San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. And just like the China to US Dream Project, this tunnel also has 3 tracks, 2 used for trains and a smaller one for emergencies. Each shuttle is 2.5 thousand feet long and needed 13,000 employees to construct it. Even though many people got to visit the City of Love in Paris and the multicultural hub of Europe in London, the channel is also used for import and export. According to some reports, 26% of traded goods travel between the UK and the rest of Europe each year using the tunnel. China approved the first underwater speed train from the port of Ningbo near Shanghai to Zhoushan, which is a group of islands on the east coast of China. The brand new railway will stretch for around 50 miles, with a decent part of it built underwater. What makes it cooler is that the train will rely on a magnetic track where the train cabins will float in the air on the tracks and speed away. If this project becomes a reality, then it will most likely feel like riding in a royal carriage. You can book cabins and rooms with multiple bedrooms and accommodations. You'd be treated like a guest of honor at any ceremony. Constant entertainment and food are yours all day long. Ticket prices may vary, but still be expensive, so not everyone could afford it. There's high-speed Wi-Fi, of course, in all areas, with some of the best seats in the world. It will be possible to live in Europe and work in Asia without flying. Even living in Russia and working in Alaska can be a reality. And if you were in the US, you can also remain on the ground and still get to London via the network. And once you reach Europe, you'd have to take the train to Paris and then the channel to London. But there hasn't been any news on the project so far. It hit an economic wall and is still in the conceptualizing stages. Many critics didn't hold back on how this project could not revolutionize the transportation industry, but might instead sink it into more depth. They claim that cargo ships and flights are just as good and a lot cheaper, so there's no need to put such large amounts of money for something that maybe only a handful of people can use. Moving cargo through trains won't necessarily be as fast as planes or ships. If this train network replaces shipping and flights, then many people who work in aviation would have to change jobs and move on to trains. Of course, something like this wouldn't happen overnight and would probably take decades. This project might even open doors for countries in Asia and Africa to build mega network speed trains all connected to each other. You might one day travel by train from South Africa all the way to the United States, passing through Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, China, Russia, and eventually the US. And if the train network expands even more, it can reach all over South America, which would make your trip even longer. It could reach every continent in the world except Antarctica. Imagine a worldwide railway network of high-speed trains connected to every station on Earth.
I've made a list of some of the creepiest abandoned projects in the world. There's everything from ghost scrapers to bygone amusement parks. Fancy a tour? If you've ever seen Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island, you know how eerie islands can be extremely creepy. Even though this abandoned place looks like the set of a horror movie, it's as real as it gets. The so-called Hashima Island lies 9 miles from the city of Nagasaki. It's been abandoned for almost 50 years. You see, when humans leave buildings unoccupied and unattended in deserted areas for quite some time, nature usually takes over. Judging by the looks of it today, I would have never guessed that Hashima Island was a hub for undersea coal mining. All the coal extracted from the area would be shipped to the rest of Japan to fuel the country's swift industrialization process. But mineral resources are finite, we know that. So, when the coal reserves started to empty, there was not so much for people to do around the area. Which leads us back to today. If you're feeling adventurous, you can take a boat ride from Nagasaki to Hashima Island and experience this dystopian sci-fi city firsthand. You'll tour empty apartment buildings overtaken by grass and be served away from any possible collapsing buildings. Sounds like a great idea for a Sunday. What do you say? This is what I like to call Disney, but with a dark twist. In 2014, a group of developers thought it would be a great idea to build a luxurious villa of Disney-like castles in the middle of a Turkish forest area. They were aiming for upper-class Europeans who had something from 375,000 to 500,000 euros in their pockets to invest in the endeavor. Since it was built near a town known for its hot springs, the owners of these luxurious condos could even enjoy their own jacuzzis filled with rehabilitating waters. The thing is, the public didn't love the idea. Some started to complain that the architecture was far from the classic Ottoman style of the region, while others thought the company cut too many trees to build this fairy tale town. In the end, the developers accumulated so many fines that it had to declare bankruptcy, and the project was abandoned. They didn't tear the castles down, though, so it just looks like a twisted live-action Disney movie over there. Now, skyscrapers are neat, but have you ever seen the world's tallest ghost scraper? The Golden Finance 117 was supposed to be the centerpiece of the Golden Metropolitan scheme, a sprawling man-made town owned by billionaire Payne Su-tong. The mini-city would be a residential and commercial hub, minutes away from downtown Tianjin. It would be filled with French and Italian-style manors, a polo club, and even a wine museum. The developers were certainly aiming to attract the super-rich. The 128-floor building was envisioned as the mini-city's crown jewel. And I mean that literally, since the top of the building would be shaped like a diamond. Construction started back in 2008, and it still hasn't been finished. The overall project was estimated to cost $10 billion, but because of several unfortunate events, it never fully materialized. Some say that the project was probably doomed from the start, since the people who could afford to live somewhere like that wouldn't want to pay so much to live in a second-tier industrial city. Oh, and as you might remember, there was a big economic recession back in 2008 that really slowed things down. Still, this enormous ghost scraper was the 5th tallest building in the world at the time. Now, if you had to pick 3 words synonymous with utopia, what would you choose? I'd say things like happiness, peace, and abundance. This meant-to-be utopian city couldn't be further away from these qualities, though. Welcome to the Mojave Desert, located in California. Can you see the city grid on the sandy ground? These lines are the remains of a utopian city that never made it to its final stage. This town was supposed to be called California City. The utopian town was envisioned by Nate Mendelsohn, a university professor who studied a lot about urban planning. The project began in the late 1950s when he bought over 80,000 acres of land in the desert. He thought of a place where families would thrive. At the time, housing was affordable, and the town came equipped with leisure options such as a golf course, swimming pool, and recreation fields. Some people did buy lots over there, but the project was interrupted. That's why, if you're driving outside of LA, you might see a small island of houses, which is a tiny fraction of what California City was supposed to be. What European country would you say is filled with abandoned places? If you said Spain, then you got it right. Let's name a few. What was once planned to be a luxury resort is now a graffiti haven. The place started to be built in 1969, but just a year later, construction halted. In Ibiza, you'll also find something called the Festival Club. You see, Ibiza wasn't always the party place it is today. This club opened its doors in 1972, but 2 years later, Spain lived through a big oil crisis and fewer tourists went to visit the island. The club was eventually abandoned, and today, visitors come to check out the graffiti art. The exterior of the houses is in perfect shape, which makes it hard to believe that all these houses were left to their own luck. According to the explorer who found them, they've been abandoned since 2008. Again, that terrible year of recession. The company that built it went broke in the final quarter of construction of the condo and abandoned the project at its very final stage. What a sad ending. Now, in Miami Beach, you'll find a luxurious abandoned hotel that once hosted a Beatles concert. In the late 1950s, it was the go-to spot for celebrities such as Frank Sinatra. Today, the Deauville Resort has already been demolished. It was shut down in 2017 after a fire damaged some of the building's structures. For a while, they decided to leave the hotel as it was, with its furniture and memorabilia still inside. Let's see what it looked like. The main entrance and lobby gave out a lot of 1950s vibe. The kitchen was still equipped with dishware and cutlery. The bathrooms had stalls and hairdryers available for use. And one could find electronic room keys thrown all over the floor. The hotel's main ballroom was where the magic used to happen. In 1964, the Beatles played a concert there that drove thousands of unticketed fans to stand outside, waiting to get a glimpse of the stars. The Deauville might have been a huge part of American cultural history, but today it's nothing more than an abandoned site. Now, there is no doubt that some of the most interesting abandoned places in the world were once amusement parks. Amusement parks are usually filled with so much laughter and joyful times. But not these ones. Neri Dreamland was meant to be Japan's Disney World, but the project failed with time. Today, Neri Dreamland is nothing but a dream. If you were visiting it before it was taken down, this is what you would see. Your heart would beat faster than usual when you passed a fog-covered roller coaster. Was that meant to be the Matterhorn? Yup. Everything about this place said you shouldn't be there. But you're too curious. Tossed on the park's floor, you would see reels of tickets and disfigured stuffed animals. Fancy walking through an empty diner? It's bizarre how the tables and stools were left in place. Walking through what was once a gift shop, you would see empty shelves and an old-school cash machine. Now, are you as disturbed as I am after watching this? Yikes!
This is Thwaites Glacier, located in West Antarctica. It's also known as the Doomsday Glacier, because if it collapses, it's game over for coastal cities. While summers are getting hotter, the glacier is being eaten from below by warm currents. It looks bad, but scientists have a plan. They consider building a gigantic sea curtain, an underwater 50-mile-long wall chained to the bottom of the dark ocean floor of Antarctica. Is this even possible, and will it work? Let's find out. The Doomsday Glacier is roughly the size of Florida. It's a massive river of ice draining a huge chunk of West Antarctica into the ocean. It currently loses more than 50 billion tons of ice every year. That equals 20 million Olympic swimming pools of water being pumped into the global sea. This single glacier causes about 4% of global sea level rise each year. This number might sound very, very small, but that melt rate is accelerating. If Thwaites crumbles completely, it holds enough water to push the global ocean up by a full 2 feet. It would permanently erase beaches and turn daily high tides into neighborhood floods. That's 2 feet added permanently to every high tide, every storm surge, every coastal flood, everywhere. But the real danger isn't the 2 feet. Thwaites helps hold back enormous volumes of inland ice. If it goes away, much more of West Antarctica can follow, leading to the sea levels rising far more than just 2 feet. To prevent this, engineers modeled the most ambitious underwater megastructure in human history. Satellites can see the surface, but the real problem is below the glacier. Near Thwaites, there's warm water. Even water that's only a few degrees above freezing can melt ice if it keeps flowing. It's like holding an ice cube under a running faucet. The water doesn't need to be hot, it just needs to keep coming. Over time, water thins out the glacier from beneath and weakens the brace holding it back. Once that brace gets weaker, the ice loses its grip on the seafloor and slides into the deep ocean much faster. That's where the sea curtain idea comes in. The goal is to keep that warm, deep water from reaching the underside of the ice shelf in the first place. Something like a long, flexible underwater barrier that rises up from the seafloor and blocks the warmest water from sneaking underneath. It doesn't fix the glacier forever, it just buys time by cutting off some of the ocean heat. So, how do you build something like that? Don't imagine a massive concrete dam. It looks more like a long underwater shower curtain, stretching 50 miles and 500 feet tall. Along that line, anchors are planted into the seafloor like underwater tent stakes, and overlapping flexible panels are attached, so they can bend instead of snap. Warm water is saltier, which makes it heavier, so it sinks and slides along the bottom, creeping under the ice shelf from below. The curtain rises high enough to block that deep layer. When the warm water reaches it, it has to move upward and mix with colder water, which cools it down before it can melt the ice as effectively. Human construction crews cannot dive 3,000 feet. Pressure is unbearable, and even sunlight doesn't care about going that deep. Building the curtain requires a fleet of autonomous underwater drones. These robots will use sonar to map the terrain before drilling massive steel anchors directly into the bedrock. Once the curtain is up, they'll patrol the line looking for rips. Living at the bottom of the world would need some serious setups. Those robots can't just swim up to the surface to change batteries. The freezing ocean above would lock them into place. To make this work, engineers might have to set up a whole underwater base camp. Drones would probably have to dock at huge charging stations on the ocean floor just to recharge for their next mission. The ocean itself will work against this project. The strong currents and drifting icebergs would always stress the curtain. In those conditions, the concrete wall would break. That's why they're looking at using flexible fibers. It bends and wobbles with the flow. If a random current makes a little tear, the current just flaps until a robot shows up to fix it. Engineers also have to worry about rogue icebergs. When massive chunks of the glacier break off, they rarely float away cleanly on the surface. Getting the gear to this part of the world is already an epic quest. Antarctica doesn't have a Home Depot yet. So bolts, fiber, and spare drones have to arrive on cargo ships from thousands of miles away. The team only gets a brief summer window to work before the ocean surface freezes completely solid. But even if engineers could achieve all of this, there's one other roadblock to consider before putting up a roadblock in the water. The Southern Ocean carries nutrients for tiny floating plants called phytoplankton. When plankton blooms, it feeds krill. Krill feeds fish and squid, and they are food for lovely penguins, seals, seabirds, and even whales. What if the current accidentally sends that heat straight into a different glacier, or blocks food from reaching local whales? You cannot exactly test a project this massive in a local swimming pool. Building this underwater marvel is only step one. It requires a permanent mechanical workforce living down there for decades to swap out cables. Experts estimate that the project could cost around $80 billion. That is literally space program money. The hardest part of the entire project might actually be getting coastal countries to split the massive bill. The most likely funding model would be a coalition of coastal countries because they don't want their cities turned into aquariums. But even a perfect 50-mile underwater curtain cannot completely stop the ocean from rising. It only hits the brakes on one specific problem. The ocean actually rises in a few different ways all at once. Surprisingly, not all of them involve melting ice. When water gets warmer, it actually expands. The molecules in the water get super active and spread out more. That means the same amount of water now takes up more space. And because the ocean has nowhere else to go, that extra volume pushes the surface higher. The planet is doing exactly this, but on a much bigger scale. Then, we have Greenland. It's way bigger than glaciers like the Doomsday Thwaites. It's a sheet of ice the size of an entire country. The Greenland ice sheet has been shrinking for decades, with net ice loss every year for nearly 30 years straight. If that block melted completely, global sea levels would rise by 23 feet. That can put a two-story house completely underwater. Mountain glaciers also add to the global sea level. Alaska alone has thousands of these, let alone what is scattered around the world. These mountaintops act like giant frozen water towers. They're slowly dripping away under the sun and feeding into the same global sea. Combine all that extra water with a storm surge and the results get very real. A storm surge acts like a giant shovel, pushing the ocean inland for a few hours. If the starting water level is even 1 inch higher, that surge pushes significantly further down your local streets. It easily overtops concrete seawalls that used to do the job perfectly. This can lead to a rare neighborhood flood suddenly becoming a yearly headache. None of this means you should cancel a trip to Miami, not in this century. Sea level rise is slow, and even a Thwaites collapse would likely play out across decades. But it's still moving in the wrong direction, which is why scientists are hunting for ways to slow the clock. And honestly, if this curtain ever gets built, watching robots anchor it to the Antarctic seafloor would be one of the strangest engineering live streams in history. Did you know that India is building a megastructure visible from space? It's happening in Andhra Pradesh, a region home to 50 million people and some of the worst climates on Earth. When it rains here, it pours enough to cause massive floods. When it dries, it turns fertile ground into a wasteland. This ambitious construction is supposed to solve the issue once and for all. However, if this multi-billion-dollar project backfires, the consequences could be devastating. Let's see why. The second longest river in India is called the Godavari. During the monsoon season, this river acts like a fire hose that nobody can turn off. We aren't talking about a drizzly afternoon. From June to September, the sky practically unzips. The water level rises and the river transforms from a calm stream into a chaotic force that swallows entire villages in days. But that's not all. A huge amount of that fresh water goes completely to waste. It rushes past the villages and dumps straight into the Bay of Bengal. Once it hits the salty ocean, it's useless for drinking or farming. We're talking about billions of gallons of much-needed water disappearing into the sea every single year. Now, on the other hand, we have the Krishna River Basin, just a few hundred miles away. There, it's literally the opposite issue. Farmers are staring at dry cracks in the ground. They're praying for rain that never comes. And Krishna does not get strong monsoon support, and most of its water is already used up before it even reaches this region. By the time it arrives, it's more like a tired stream than a healthy river. That's why the authorities looked at the map and came up with a solution. Basically, take the excess water from the angry river and push it over to the dry river. This brings us to the Polavaram. The engineers are building a structure that's a giant machine, not just a wall. It's built to connect these two massive water systems, like running a giant pipe from the side that has too much to the side that has almost nothing. The project combines a massive earth and rock dam with a hydropower plant and a network of canals. However, the most impressive part of this layout is the spillway. It's a giant complex of concrete, channels, and support systems. It looks less like a dam and more like a fortress built for titans. It's a gigantic safety valve for the Earth. It stretches for close to a mile across, wider than 10 football fields placed side by side, and rises several dozen feet above the riverbed. It's fitted with dozens of huge steel gates, each one weighing hundreds of tons, and built to hold back walls of water until the system decides to let them go. The spillway is incredibly powerful. It has a discharge of around 5 million cusics. In simple terms, it can blast out millions of cubic feet of water every single second. That puts it in the same league as the spillway at China's Three Gorges Dam, one of the most powerful flood control structures on the planet. Engineers designed it to handle what they call a 1,000-year flood. And no, that doesn't mean you need to mark your calendar for the year 3026. It just means there's a 0.1% chance that a flood this massive will hit the valley in any given year. Why are the architects so obsessed with these safety statistics? Because the location leaves no room for error. The Godavari Delta downstream is home to millions of people. If this project backfires, meaning the dam breaches or the gates fail during a storm, it wouldn't just be a leak. It would be a human-made tsunami. The water meant to save the region would instead wipe it off the map. The construction pace of the Polavaram project matches this insane scale. In 2019, the workers on this site set a Guinness World Record. They poured 42,000 cubic yards of concrete in exactly 24 hours. If you loaded all that concrete into standard mixers, you would fill 4,000 trucks. Line them up bumper to bumper, and you'd get a traffic jam stretching for 22 miles. Even with that in mind, the project still has a way to go. It's so big that it starts to bend its own surroundings. it won't just stop or redirect water. It might change the air itself. Once the dam is complete, it will hold a reservoir so large that it'll function like a brand new inland sea. Put that much water under the Indian sun and something obvious will happen. It'll lift into the air. Day after day, the surface will turn into a giant steam engine sending moisture upward. Scientists call this a microclimate, but we call it accidental weather control. By creating a massive body of water, you change the local humidity and temperature. You're essentially installing a giant humidifier in a region that used to be dry. This is the part that makes experts nervous. What if they accidentally create a new climate problem while trying to solve the current one? Once you block a river and create a lake this big, you start messing with the heat and moisture in the air above. The system meant to control water on the ground ends up influencing the weather overhead too. Then there is the issue of moving the water. Picture the state as two giant tanks. One is overflowing and about to burst. The other is dry. The engineers are trying to connect them with a massive pipe to balance the levels before either one becomes a disaster. How are they doing this? To pull this off, they're carving out the earth, digging two massive canals, each stretching more than 100 miles. These aren't simple ditches, they're artificial rivers carved to ignore the natural layout of the land and go where engineers tell them to go. In 2022, monsoon floods slammed into the site mid-build. Water forced its way past temporary barriers and damaged critical leak control work. The crew had to stop, assess the damage, and start restoring the damaged sections. And the risks aren't just about concrete breaking. The real cost of this project is human. To build the city of water, you have to remove the real cities of people. When the reservoir fills, it will submerge nearly 250 square miles of land. That much water does not make room for anyone. Close to 200,000 people would have to be relocated. Old forests, tribal lands, and villages that stood for generations will disappear beneath the surface. This is the price of the project. So, with all this concrete and chaos, when does the ribbon get cut? Here's the twist. This project has been ongoing since the 1940s, back when the British were still in charge. The foundation stone appeared in 1980. Real work waited until 2004. It's a rare piece of infrastructure that has outlived conflicts and economic crashes, yet it's still under construction. Major parts of the main dam are incomplete. The reservoir cannot be filled to its full height, and key power systems have not been installed. Several resettlement zones also remain unfinished, which means the final stage of the project is still years away. Aside from the ambition and the scale, money is also the reason it takes so long. Early plans estimated about $1.5 billion. Today, the cost has passed $6.5 billion and keeps climbing. But is it worth the price? Depends on who you ask. For the farmers watching their fields dry out, the answer is yes. For the families watching their homes get swallowed by the reservoir, the answer is no. The latest deadline for completion is by the end of this decade, so there are no more excuses. The Polavaram project is a testament to human ambition. It's humans looking at Mother Nature and saying, "I think you put that river in the wrong place. Let me fix that for you." Will it work? And how well? We'll find out soon. Until then, the Godavari will keep flowing and overflowing while the Krishna will keep shrinking, looking like an abandoned movie set.